Of the body of the late retired President Mwai Kibaki. The motorcade of the head of state arrived at the parliament buildings at 10 a.m. The president was received by the deputy president William Ruto in a rare show of unity, political differences aside, and the two speakers of the parliament. Leaders eulogizing the late former president as a man who turned around the country's economy, with many urging aspirants eyeing different positions in the August polls to emulate the late president.
All the leaders who aspire to be in various positions, whether they are members of parliament, especially governors, and those who aspire for presidential positions, we expect and we want to encourage them to put economy central to the country so that we are able to move to the next level.
The bottom line, it's to grow our economy, make sure that we mechanize our agriculture, like what Mzee started, make sure that we have more industries so that we can do value addition for our products, and make sure that our people work.
When he got to the reins of power, he was able to give us many universities, privatized even education by making it possible to have private universities, and even opened up opportunities in our public universities.
Yeye binafsi kama kiongozi alikuwa amechukia ufisadi na alifanya lolote liwe kwamba wakati hata cabinet ilihusishwa na ufisadi na tukapata serikali iko na madai ya ufisadi wakati alikuwa rais, aliweza kuwafuta kazi mawaziri.
Now hundreds flocked parliament buildings to view the body of former President Mwai Kibaki. The long queues are stretching from parliament buildings to City Hall, almost 800 meters away.
Monday marked the first day where the body of retired President Mwai Kibaki will lie in state at parliament buildings for 3 days. Kenyans from all walks of life thronged to the parliament precincts and queued patiently to view the body of the former head of state. Some traveling from as far as Kakamega to pay their respects to the late former president.
Hani nakuambia nilishikwa na usuni vile nilisikia president akitangaza. Ni rais mwenye nilipenda sana. So kwa hivyo nasafiri kutoka Kakamega kule Shinyalu kwa Bichichi kule. So paka nafika hapa Nairobi kuona mwili. Nashukuru kwa ajili ya kupata nafasi kuenda kutazama mwili.
Nyumbani ni Kakamega, Lwandeti Mahanga. Nilikuwa nampenda sana president wetu na alituongoza vizuri, akatuletea maendeleo, ndio maana nikasema nifike hapa.
Kenyans eulogizing Kibaki as a leader who drove the country's economy forward and engineered reforms in the education sector.
Tusaidia sana upande wa ujenzi wa taifa. Kitu ya kwanza alifumbua upande wa CDF, kutoa shule free education, hospitali free.
Tunajivunia kwake yeye kwa sababu ya free primary education, kwa sababu ya gharama. Je, ingekuwa wakati huo na sasa ile gharama ambao ya wazazi wangelipa na wakati huu vile economy hii vile iko sasa, wazazi wangeumia sana.
Nakumbuka marehemu Kibaki kwa kazi kubwa ambayo alifanya akiwa president, kwa kutengeneza mabarabara nyingi na pia stima.
Kibaki alikuwa mzuri juu alitengeneza Thika highway, super highway.
Alikuwa anatukuta na chafu, anatuambia tuvae viatu. Anasema vijana wa country basi waoge, wasaidie vile wanaweza oga na wavae viatu. Kwa hiyo siwezi sema mzee alikuwa mbaya. Kama ni pesa ya kusaidia alikuwa anapewa vijana sana.
The body of the late president will lie in state at parliament until Wednesday, with Kenyans urged to turn up in large numbers to pay their respects.
And of course, the process continues today and tomorrow. The convoy escorting the body of the late president left the Lee funeral home at 10 minutes to 7, headed for parliament buildings. The exercise was conducted with military precision. At 10 minutes to 7 a.m. at Lee funeral, a Kenyan flag-draped casket was hoisted on a military carriage. Headed for parliament buildings for the solemn ceremony of viewing the body of Kenya's third president, Mwai Kibaki. The convoy snaking through Valley Road, Kenyatta Avenue to Uhuru Highway, Parliament Road, and finally to Parliament buildings at exactly 7:15. The Kenya Defence Forces soldiers lifted the casket from the carriage to Parliament buildings.
National salute! Present arms!
As the military band hummed solemn tunes from their instruments. Then senior dignitaries and government officials started to stream to Parliament buildings as the military continued to prepare the body for viewing. 10 minutes to 10 a.m., the Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto, arrives in Parliament buildings to usher in President Uhuru Kenyatta, who would arrive 12 minutes later to lead the nation in celebrating a man described as a gentle giant, an economist par excellence, and the initiator of a free primary education. The body of the late president lying on a white presidential standard flag, which is the standard he used during his reign as president. Retired Bishop of the Catholic Archdiocese of Nairobi, Cardinal John Jue, would read a few convocations before the body viewing began.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning.
President Kenyatta and First Lady Margaret Kenyatta leading the park, followed by President Kibaki's family, the Deputy President, service commanders, speakers of both houses of Parliament, majority and minority leaders in both chambers, cabinet secretaries, senior government officials and opinion leaders in the country, diplomats, and finally members of the public. The body viewing will continue on Tuesday and Wednesday, ahead of interdenominational service at Nyayo Stadium on Friday, and the burial ceremony in his native Othaya home on Saturday. And Narok County Commander Kizito Mutoro, who served as the late President Mwai Kibaki's personal bodyguard for 10 years, eulogized the former president as an astute, charming, and charismatic leader. Kizito described the late president as a jovial and forgiving man who never missed church, where he freely mingled with Kenyans from all walks of life.
Familia hiyo, kwa sababu tumekaa nao na mzee kwa miaka mingi sana. The close protective unit ile yake.
John Kizito Mutoro, who worked for the late former president for the 10 years as the leader of the close protection unit, has hailed the late leader as a man who highly valued education and even urged his security personnel to put emphasis on the same.
Alikuwa anapenda elimu sana. Na kila mara kitu kikitokezea lazima tu angeleta tu furaha. Kwa hivyo alikuwa ni mzee mcheshi, rafiki na ni baba.
He called on Kenyans to emulate him as he was a non-tribal leader ready to lend an ear to everyone.
Alikuwa ni president ambaye anajua kutupatia mwelekeo kwa pati ya elimu. Hakutaka kujua ni nani, unatoka wapi, si ati labda ingekuwa ati ni Mkikuyu ama ni mtu kutoka Gema ama kutoka zile area. No. Familia hiyo ilikuwa inatu accommodate zote.
According to the police boss, Kibaki was a prayerful man who never missed a Sunday service and did not prefer a special seat for him in church.
Kila wakati tulikuwa tukifanya sala, kuomba. Kila wakati kama hatujakula tunaomba, kila mahali tunaomba. Sundays tunaenda kanisa na anafuata kanisa vile inaendelea. Mzee alikuwa ni mtu wa kuforgive. Mtu akimkosea, wale walikuwa mkimkosea, kisha mwambie tu pole kuishi.
He fondly remembered the many times the former head of state used humor and charisma to lighten up the room every time during work.
Mzee mwenyewe alikuwa ni mcheshi. Mahali pote alingeweza kukutana na watu, unasikia tu ni story, mambo hata ungejua ni president. Alikuwa na interact na kila mtu.
Members of the public have been given an opportunity to pen down their commiserations in honor of the late President Mwai Kibaki from today at the CDF offices in Othaya. Burial preparations are meanwhile ongoing at the President's residence in Othaya, Nyeri County. A requiem mass will be held on Saturday 30th at an approved stadium in Othaya, followed by the burial at his rural home.
Somber mood continues to engulf in Othaya, Nyeri County as political and religious leaders and residents mourn the demise of former President Mwai Kibaki. Members of the public will be able to jot down their commiserations through the office of CDF in Othaya. Gathe Muruga, who worked for Kibaki at State House for 22 years, eulogized Kibaki as an outstanding person with passion for development.
Tena uhusiano wake na watu wale wengine ulikuwa wabere sana kusimama na kuongea na mtu na roho safi na tena mkarimu ikiwa ni kukusaidia yoyote
la kwake tutamumiss tena hata kwa golf club huko Nyeri.
Other political leaders led by Gatudu Southern P. Moses Kuria said Kibaki was a true economist who valued the affairs of development for the nation.
High sense of what we call cause-effect relationship. He knew when I do this, this will happen. And that's why he was able to have very balanced development in this country.
And as I said, he was a man of few words. He would then leave. And we used to love him. And he was a good man.
Those years that he served in government, we have never had any allegations leveled towards him concerning corruption. So that is something that we should emulate as leaders.
Othaya Teaching and Referral Hospital, now that is what it is called now. It should be called Mwai Kibaki Othaya Teaching and Referral Hospital in honor of our departed sage.
All is set for the burial ceremony, which is scheduled to be held this Saturday at approved stadium in Othaya.
Right, time for us now to have a look at what the papers have about this man who never wore his military fatigue, the man who never wore his ceremonial uniform, and he was just in his suit and was fine with it. Victor, probably you can tell us what you have and the papers you have there.
All right, I have got two newspapers here.
Okay.
The Daily Nation and the Star newspaper. Let me start with the Daily Nation. On the front page, a nation mourns. On the front page of the Daily Nation, a nation mourns, a splash of military color and tradition amidst grief as the remains of former President Mwai Kibaki lie in state in Parliament buildings, where thousands lined up yesterday to pay their last respects to a leader described as revolutionary and visionary. That story is fleshed out there for you on page 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9. You can take a look at that story. On the front page, another fuel crisis as EPRA sleeps on job. Not again, Curia. Not again. Not again. So barely a week after the government pledged a return to normalcy in the fuel sector, motorists are once again staring at a countrywide shortage that is blamed on pricing and supply model that favors big multinationals who control the market. Who is suffering? The motorist. All right. Quickly, on the second page, there was that story, if you can remember, there was a story of an obituary that went viral on social media. And now it's been fleshed out there for you on page 2, so you can take a read on what it meant. And now CS Magoha urges judges to stop new curriculum case. Of course, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has asked 3 High Court judges to dismiss a petition seeking to block the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, otherwise known as CBC. All right, very quickly on the third page here, rather fourth page, Uhuru leads Kenyans in paying their last respect to Kibaki at Parliament. The body of Kenya's third president will lie in state at Parliament buildings for 3 days, starting yesterday, before a burial on April 30th at his or their home in Nyeri County. Several pictures there of leaders attending that function yesterday at Parliament buildings. And the military gun carrier that ferried Kibaki's body. The story about the vehicle. The vehicle is designed specifically for military use in conducting reconnaissance, escort, and support duties, otherwise known as artillery. I will give you more details in the course of this program, and of course it's all about President Mwai Kibaki the late. The property Kibaki fought hard to keep. Kenyans show up in droves to view Kibaki's body at Parliament buildings. Pictures there showing emotions, Kenyans coming from all walks of life, different leaders as well as the judiciary, officials coming as well to view the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, moving inside, we have got more politics, which I will handle in not too long. What do you have, Jacob?
Let me go through the standard very quickly. Kenya honors Kibaki. That's what is on the front page. Kenya honors Kibaki. And of course, you see the photo of the carriage and the caskets dropped in the Kenyan flag, and of course the Kenyan flag on the side, as well as his presidential standard. Page 2 has pictorials of the people, men and women who came to view the body of the late president. That is what is in page 2 of the standard. But page 4, he was a great mentor and easy to work with. And of course, this is a tribute by Nicholas Ng'ang'a, who was the former PS, the Ministry of Finance and Planning. And of course, as Kenyans continue to pay tribute to Kibaki as he lies in state. And you have got the photo of the Chief Justice and the entire leadership of the judiciary headed towards a parliament. Kibaki stained the government that Kenyans had put so much hope in. That is in page 6, and there are those who feel the president failed to take that very particular moment which had been offered to him in 2002 to probably end ethnicity as well as the politics of betrayal. That is what is captured on page 6 of this standard. Quite an interesting one, Victor, and probably we'll be able to look at it when Professor Sam Ongeri and some of the close allies of the president come in, whether the president squandered a moment in the year 2002. Kibaki State House had fair share of high moments and low ones too. That is on page 8. And of course, you know some of the low moments, what some of these low moments were, like the emerging, for a press conference at night, to say what he said, which we don't want really to repeat here. And I think the story of squandering a golden opportunity to fix the country is also covered again on page 10 of the standard. But page number 14, and this is something that is developing even as we celebrate the life of President Mwai Kibaki, is that IBC has stuck to its guns. That these political parties and actually the presidential aspirants must name their running mates by the 28th. So there are 3 days for Deputy President William Ruto, ODM leader Raila Odinga, who is flying the Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party flag. They must name their running mates, as well as the other presidential contenders, including Jimmy Wanjigi, and every other person who seeks the office must name their running mate by Friday. That is on the 28th. That will be Thursday. So by Friday, we should be able to know who is the running mate for the various political aspirants, particularly in the presidential race as well as the gubernatorial race. Do you have something else there?
Absolutely. Just to tie it to what you've said. Now, while the Electoral Commission insists on the Thursday deadline, the Azimio team says that the cutoff date is actually not anchored in law, and once it moved to May and June. I think, Kyria,
all right, before you take up with the stars, the pictures you have there are pictures of the body now leaving the Lee funeral home, headed towards Parliament. for the very second day of the public viewing of the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki, and this is a wall-to-wall coverage of the same. We're bringing you these live pictures right from the scene of happening. Victor,
today they've done it a bit early. It's 6:37 a.m. Probably in line with the military time, and precision. That is, they're snaking. If I get it right, I think that's Kenyatta Avenue. Right, they're moving down Kenyatta Avenue. That is just outside Serena. And people who are using that road, probably for the next few minutes or so, if you can wait, you can wait, because traffic has been interrupted briefly. And of course, we understand why. The gun carriage there, still on the move, and the outriders, the military outriders, actually taking charge of that convoy. This is the time, John, that most Kenyans really understand the situation on the ground, and nobody would even actually complain about the traffic.
Nobody would, and I think the sacrifices everybody has accepted that we must make for the sake of country and for the sake of the third president of the republic, because a gentleman, like we were saying yesterday, dedicated his entire life to serving this republic. Because Victor, rarely do you get plucked from your life, when you're just beginning as a lecturer, actually an assistant lecturer at Makerere University. Just when you're being plucked out of that life, you're building up your life to come and immerse yourself into a not independent country. So you're beginning with the problems of a not independent country. So that means you dedicate your entire life to this nation, and that is who President Mwai Kibaki was to this country.
Yes, and he's made a name for himself. Yesterday, the son, Jimmy Kibaki, said that at 90 he's lived, and it's now time for people to celebrate his life, not to mourn, because as far as he's concerned, he's done his best to humanity and to his country that he loved. President Kibaki, actually, as you said, left lecture halls to come and serve his country for all those years, which I think is a distinguished honor that he could give to his country. And of course, there you have the military officers accompanying the casket on that gun carriage, a special lorry called gun carriage that is only meant for particular and special occasions. This was used by during Mwai's burial. The same is also used for President Kibaki. If you can take a look keenly, there are two flags there. The one, the presidential flag, which President Kibaki used, and the national flag.
Actually, the presidential standard is quite important, because you will remember, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta used the deep blue presidential standard. Then President Daniel Arap Moi used the green presidential standard. President Mwai Kibaki used the white standard with some olive branch leaves, and then there's that coat of arms, and that must be captured in every presidential standard.
Yes,
you have like President Uhuru Kenyatta now is using the deep blue again presidential standard. There are only three, so it's either green, white or blue, and then you can modify it the way you want, but there are three. That means the incoming president, since President Uhuru Kenyatta is using a deep blue, the one that will come after him clearly must go for green. But the white one, as you rightly captured it, is President Mwai Kibaki's presidential standard. And if you monitor carefully, once his body arrives in Parliament, where he lies is another presidential standard. His presidential standard again, he's lying on his presidential standard, and that is a big military honor happening right there. At Uhuru Highway now, headed towards Parliament. Looks like this event, like we said, being a military event, everything is in order, and that means at exactly 9 it will be open to the public now to start viewing the body of President Mwai Kibaki.
3 days of mourning, and all flags to fly at half-mast across within our borders. in all government institutions, and that is a government proclamation, the President Kenyatta's proclamation, and that is the way it's supposed to be until President Mwai Kibaki the late will be laid to rest on Saturday. Remember, interdenominational prayer will take place on Friday at the Nyayo National Stadium. So if you have got a minute or two, please make it down to Parliament buildings if you are within Nairobi, or even can travel. There's no problem, no problem.
Actually, yesterday people traveled as far as from Kakamega.
Exactly, no problem.
To come and view the body. So I mean,
it's open to the public.
If you really want to do it, you have an opportunity.
Yes.
And this is the biggest honor you can give. This is the biggest goodbye you can bid to President Mwai Kibaki, because history is, written, and we hope and pray that history shall remember him kindly and favor him, as it were.
The slow pace tells a lot. There's no hurry. Everything, because even in the military, everything is always done in a particular manner. And you can imagine the distance between Lee Funeral Home and Parliament buildings is roughly 2 kilometers or so. And with time, they have to make it, if it's 7, in the next few minutes, that's around 18 minutes or so, they'll make their way to Parliament buildings, and the body will be offloaded from the gun carriage into that particular room where public viewing will take place. Now, you talked about the issue of military. We have got colonels, and the people who are actually leading this particular event are colonels. They're not bodyguards. It's a mark of honor. Yes. It's a mark of respect to the former commander-in-chief, and in that rank, the only people who are allowed to take charge are the people in the rank of colonels. And it's quite interesting, because if you look at the way even doing their services there, the parade itself, it's articulate, precise.
There's even a formation, if you look at it that way. And quite interesting, because being their immediate former commander-in-chief, like you have said, it is the biggest honor they can grant to him. And like you can tell now, they're almost at Parliament, because this is the road leading to Parliament. So that means then the body is arriving in Parliament buildings. Obviously, there will be a bit of preparations for the body before then the public can be allowed to start viewing the body. And we have a team in Parliament, and accompanying the body also, you can see work being done by Peter Otieno, a cameraman, quite a fantastic job. Absolutely. Bringing you live pictures of this very solemn event.
But Jacob, I think it's also safe to say that the issue of the burial site is as good as settled, because all preparations are now heading towards Othaya. As opposed to some calls from different quarters that he be buried at the Freedom's Corner.
Well, it appears like a settled debate. I think there's a bit of complication in the sense that, Mama Lucy Kibaki, Her Excellency, the late wife of President Mwai Kibaki, is buried in Othaya, and in Kikuyu customs, in most places, a husband is buried next to the gravesite of the wife. And the fact that Mama Lucy Kibaki lies in Othaya, I think it was only it would make more sense that the president is also laid to rest in Othaya. And I'm sure if the debate had actually settled on Heroes Corner at Uhuru Gardens, you would have had some mamas from the people of Othaya about that very
exactly. So I think it's safe to say again that they are right of Parliament. That is the entrance of Parliament buildings, and at this particular point, all the vehicles, the outriders, will give way, and the gun carriage is the only one that will make it, not really, but will get into Parliament buildings. There you have it. In the next, there's the corner at the Parliament buildings. There you have it. It's such a sad moment for the country, and as Kenyans, you know what? This is a passage of life. I mean, So long as we are still here, that is the right direction. But as Jimmy Kibaki said yesterday, we should be able to celebrate the life of the late president.
There is also history unfolding.
Right.
Victor Olo, as much as it is sad, because like you heard Jimmy Kibaki say yesterday, this is a man who has lived his life, and God has been gracious to him.
Yes.
90 years is no mean feat. And this is history unfolding. And, you know, in the echelons of history in this country, as this things unfold before our eyes, it is also history being shaped. And God has been gracious to President Kibaki, and same as he's been gracious to us, you know, to also be able to witness such a moment, Victor.
And absolutely, just to mention, to quote what Jimmy said again yesterday, for the last 3 years has not been so easy for the president. He's been ailing, and it's been a tough point for him, but he, according to Jimmy, he was comfortable with it. You know, he said that he was comfortable with it. So I think it's also important to mention that Jimmy, who was very close to the father, confirmed that, of course, indeed, the last 3 years been a tough one for the late president, but nonetheless, he was okay with it.
And you can imagine how tough it has been for them. I mean, losing the mother, and then almost immediately your dad is ailing.
Yes.
And you have to deal with it for, you know, some years. You can imagine how painful. And you could see it from their faces yesterday as they were viewing the body of their late dad. And you heard Jimmy say, in the house, President Kibaki was not the president, was not a public official. In the house, President Kibaki was a dad to them, and he was very keen on family values and, you know, bringing up his family in the right way. And you could tell from the faces of his 4 children that they indeed they were feeling the loss. Now, you know, losing a mother and a dad. You can imagine how that hit them, and badly so. So yeah, you could see it from their faces.
All right. So the military taking charge as well. It is a military affair exclusively, and it's drawn. The colonels are drawn from the 3 arms of the military. That is the Kenya Navy, the Kenya Air Force, and the Kenya Army. All of them in the position of the colonels. Now, the body is being removed from the gun carriage in a particular order, even the way it's being handled, being moved. They are the pallbearers. At this particular point, they are the pallbearers. A formation has been made, and 10 minutes to 7. Time is of essence in the world of military. Time is of essence. So
then you have to love the discipline that our military has.
There you go.
I think it's one of the best training institutions when it comes to issues of discipline. You've got to love it because seeing how they executed the event yesterday, how they're executing it today, how they're going to execute it tomorrow, and obviously you can always be sure that even on Friday and Saturday, the event will run on course and in good time because that is what the military or the Kenya Defence Forces of the Republic of Kenya is about, and you have to love the way they execute their stuff.
Absolutely. There you have it. Now the body is being wheeled into the Parliament buildings, draped in the Kenyan flag. Everything has to be in order. No chance for mistake. In fact, in the military, there is no space for failure. No. There is no space for failure. You'd rather do it 1,000,000 times until you get it right. But there is no space for failure, because the moment you fail your country. That's according to them. There you have it now. The body is being wheeled to the room where the public viewing will take place. And as you said, I think the next few minutes at 7, the process will take place again. Live pictures from Parliament buildings. And of course, this is where you get 100% clear wall-to-wall coverage of this national event taking place there. A salute of honor. Indeed, salute of honor. Perhaps you can take a listen on what's taking place. National anthem.
Shukran. That is the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki arriving in Parliament buildings. It will be prepared for public viewing. That will start at 9 a.m. Members of the public are expected to begin the exercise of publicly viewing the body at Parliament buildings at 9 a.m. So you can make your way there. And the formations continue as the military continue to execute this very important but solemn ceremony. And Kenyans, I understand, have started lining up, but we'll be showing you pictures of the streets of Nairobi and how Kenyans are queuing to view the body of the late president. But Victor, probably before we pick up with the conversation here in studio, because we have guests who will be talking to, there was something you were supposed to review from the Daily Nation and how they covered the event.
Absolutely. It's a full page here on page 9, full pictures, and emotions ran high. And actually, something that is quite important to mention is that at that particular point where the body will lie in state, there is a glass kind of a closet where the red velvet and the presidential, his ceremonial, how do you call it, placed on his body. Actually, the cupboard and other items, books, a golf club and other items were placed by him, by the body, all for people to just to have a glimpse of the life of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And if you look at even the walls, there's a pictorial there actually getting people to down memory lane the life of President Mwai Kibaki, his life as a family man, his life as a president when he was still in the position, as well as serving as a president. But then that is how the situation was. And yesterday, when President Uhuru Kenyatta visited the family, he had a very, very short moment with the family there. And before he left.
You can see from the pictures running on the screen, other than the military officers marching, the security is very tight in Parliament. And at the entrance of the gate, I don't know whether you saw the red berets on the military police officers.
Yes.
That's a very serious event.
In fact, they say that military police is, in fact, the army, let me call it that way, the military officers, they also respect the military officers. In fact, the army can get arrested by the military officers. So there's some order in the military. So they're the people taking charge, not the regular police officers. This is a military affair, as you've repeatedly said here. And if you looked at that particular guard, it's a quarter guard. It's not a full guard. It's a quarter guard drawn from the three, the Kenya Army, the Kenya Navy, and the Kenya Air Force. And even the commanders, the colonels led by the brigadier there, is also drawn from the Kenya Army. So it's a full military affair.
All right.
Theory.
Absolutely. I think it's time for us now to begin the conversations in studio. And of course, we'll be throwing it to you at some point. But on my end, I have Ronald K. Meru, who is the chairman of the Muthaiga Golf Club. President Kibaki was really a fan of golf and actually a player, big time. And we'll be talking about his legacy, particularly when it comes to the sport of golf. But thank you very much, Chairman, for joining us this morning.
Asante sana.
When history is written about the sport of golf, what do you think will be President Kibaki's legacy?
Oh, thank you. We must say that the shoes that the president has left, as you know, the president joined us at Muthaiga in 1988, and I can say he's been the chairman of Kenya Golf Union, the patron of Kenya Golf Union, and he's done a lot of strides in making the game of golf to enable golfers to be at the level that we are at this point. So as golfers, we all owe it to him for what he's done for the game of golf in this country, not only as professional golfers, even to the level of amateur golf, ladies golf, and most of all to the junior golf. He has been very instrumental in building all these areas of the game of golf. Yeah.
Did he ever play when you were in charge of the Muthaiga Golf Club?
No, unfortunately for me, because I've been chairman for the last 2 years. Unfortunately, he did not play for the last 2 years because, as you know, once he had his fatal accident in 2002, he had an ankle injury which didn't let him play golf since that time. But before that, he used to play, and he was always playing at Muthaiga most of the time.
Speaking to your predecessors at the Muthaiga Golf Club, how would they rate, President Kibaki's playing? I mean, how did he tee? What was his highest? Some of those things.
Yes, for him, one thing about him, he was always the same character that you saw him as he was the president. Always a relaxed person, always a jovial person, very welcoming. So he always enjoyed his game of golf. He was not those people who would take it emotionally and all. This is what most of the people remember him for. And one very interesting thing about the late president was, especially when you're playing with him and you know what happens as you're teeing off on the golf course. He used his tee, and let's say you hit it and the tee disappears for a minute. In his jovial way, you look for that tee and not leave that tee until you find the tee for the ball. So that was one comical part about him, and people really enjoyed that area of him, that he could wait and make sure that he finds it whatever time it would take, and people always used to find that very comical about him. But apart from that, he was a very, very fun person to play with, and he accommodated all people from all levels. He could interact with the young, the old, and anyone without any discrimination. Yeah.
Talk to us about the improvement, particularly the Ladies Golf Union, and the kind of support President Kibaki gave to this group, and also the Junior Golf Foundation, because at some point it was unheard of that juniors would be playing golf.
Yeah. So for him, first, I would, from Muthaiga Golf Club, obviously, I would like to thank him because he supported the ladies section. So we have what we call the Muthaiga Cup ladies tournament every year. Actually, it was lined up to happen next Friday. So with that, through our lady captain, we have had to postpone that event. We're looking forward to host it again. This is close to over 20 years when the family has been supporting this event. So these are some of the strides that you can tell him and his family have always been supporting the ladies golf. In terms of Kenya Ladies Golf Union, obviously being the patron of KGU and all the golfing societies, he was instrumental in leading all the initiatives, even in the ladies section. Touching a bit on the junior golf area, he was also very instrumental because all these lie under the patronage of KGU, because all these are bodies that govern the game of golf in Kenya. So we would say that he has done a lot of different strides in making sure that everybody is enabled to play golf. And you can know with all that he tried to do even when he was president was in terms of making sure that we do not lose any golf courses, because there was a time that there was a big threat for losing most of the golf clubs.
Hold that thought, because it is important. We will talk about that because over the years, sometimes we've seen the dilapidation of golf clubs, and it is important because some people think it's a fertile grazing land when you talk about golfing clubs and the repossession of it. We will talk about it. But Victor, the record of President Kibaki when it comes to issues of golf and teeing are completely undisputed.
Not even golf alone, but to speak on golf. Well, I'm not a golf expert, but it's been said over and over again that President Kibaki, that was his favorite game. Yesterday when we had Minister Munyao here said that they would, President Kibaki would play all alone or in twos, the pars, the tees, and the takeoffs. He was quite easy when he was enjoying his game. And I think from what he's saying there is that it's a game of calculation. Take your time, relax. As some of us, supporters of Arsenal, we know how to be patient. No pun intended to president supporters. But President Kibaki loved golf. You know what happens? During his time, even rugby players, you would see many teams going to State House to get the flag, you know, going to play, you know, in European countries. We saw national teams like the volleyball, the basketball, the men, the Maltese Strikers, the rugby teams. He loved games and sports. And I think in terms of nurturing talent, President Mwai Kibaki did his way best to make sure that everybody was given a chance to explore his talent. And that is why even the issue of CBC was hatched during his time as a president. So we all know where he started from. Yes.
All right. Probably can talk to Stephen Mogaka, particularly on the aspect of what you would say, what the papers are carrying today. The president, you know, Mwai Kibaki squandered a very important moment in the year 2002. You know, get to hear from Stephen Mogaka whether that is true.
Stephen Mogaka is a constitutional lawyer and an advocate of the High Court, actually, as well as a Jubilee parliamentary candidate to West Bugirango Kisii. But today we want to talk on a different league. First of all, as a Kenyan, I will give you a minute to have your opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Victor. Permit me to join us Kenyans in celebrating the life and times of His Excellency, President Mwai Kibaki, a brilliant mind and a shining star, all aspects of his life. I join Kenyans in putting a golden wreath on his casket. And on behalf of my people from West Bugirango, we really celebrate the development strides that were achieved under the able leadership of President Mwai Kibaki, and pray that future presidents emulate what Emilio Kibaki did as a president. A very articulate parliamentarian, a very serious economist, a very jovial old man, and indeed a celebrity par excellence.
As an advocate, the independence of the judiciary and the legal fraternity, perhaps you can say that you had a field day because he opened the doors for, you know, the legal practitioners to enjoy their spaces.
Oh, indeed. It is both good and bad because remember, as soon as the President Kibaki assumed office, there was a serious corruption crisis in the judiciary. And you remember, it is during Kibaki's time that for the first time there was a radical surgery on the judiciary, and judges who presumed that till then that they were sacred cows, indispensable and removable, were thrown out of the window. So it is that aspect that we celebrate Emilio Mwai Kibaki for.
Yes.
Although some legal minds think that due process was never used in removing those judges.
We'll get
bad things require bad actions to remedy.
We'll get into details briefly because we still have time to discuss more on President Mwai Kibaki. All right, Kyria?
Absolutely. It's time for us now to head to Parliament a bit and get to see what is happening there. And I'm joined live by our reporter Yusuf Farah, who's on standby in Parliament. Let's just get a feel of what is ongoing there. Farah, can you hear me? Please update us on what is ongoing in Parliament, obviously before the public viewing of the body begins.
All right. A very good morning to you, John Jacob Kiera from the Broadcasting House. As you said, we're coming to you live from the Parliament buildings, where at around 6:46 a.m. today, the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki arrived through the Parliament Road. Of course, it was brought in here with heavy military security, and the body proceeded to enter the Parliament buildings right behind me. And as soon as the body entered, there was a bit of a stop for a little bit of time, and then the national anthem was played, of course, in respect to the late. So what we have now is that the body has arrived, coming through the Parliament buildings. It has entered Parliament. At around 9 a.m. I've been informed that the Parliament will be open to public for viewing. Of course, this being day 2 of the viewing in terms of the public paying their last respect to the late president. So, John Jacob Kiora, that is the much that we have for you, that the president, the body rather, of the late president has already been here. And of course, with me today here, we have I have my colleague, Ben Troy Njue. Of course, he's going to just tell us, Troy, good morning. And just what do you make of today as far as the project coming in, of course, coming in, and it will be opened later, of course, to the public?
And indeed, a lot of Kenyans are waiting, actually, if you on the way from the Parliament Road. There are Kenyans queuing already, waiting for 9 a.m. And something Kenyans have is the opportunity to bid farewell to the late president. Inside, actually, there is a photo gallery which has over 200 photos which document the life, the times, and even the presidency of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And actually, the video wall was mounted in record time, about 18 hours by the military. And I have already had an opportunity to see it. And for Kenyans, the young Kenyans, we know, of course, Kibaki entered the parliament way back in the 70s. And Kenyans who have not had an opportunity to know the former president as a member of parliament of Nairobi and also of Othaya had the chance to see him even when he was a young man. So it's an opportunity for Kenyans today and also tomorrow to actually have a feel of what the life and times of the late president were. So Kenyans who want to see that being documented by the military have an opportunity to do that as from 9 a.m. And we will also be here to update them. We also be expecting the dignitaries who did not get an opportunity to have to pay their last respect yesterday, have that opportunity today, and also the parliamentarians, some who are not around Nairobi yesterday, we expect them today. So it will be a hive of activities anytime from 9 a.m.
Yes. And of course, the level of security that has been, we've seen security present here today is top-notch, Ben Troy. And of course, for the viewer back at home, we'll be here standing by to bring you all the news. So keep it local on KBC Channel 1. From me and Troy, back to you in studio, John Jacob.
Thanks very much, Yusuf Farah and Ben Troy Njue, as you keep guard at the Parliament buildings. But before I let you go, Farah, a very quick one. Have you been able probably to see the number of people queuing so far this morning, ahead of the public viewing of the body? Have you been able to see how long the queue is probably and how many people are there?
Well, I can't really quantify the number, but perhaps from the other side of Parliament Road, we have NYS that are standing there basically just to guide people that are queuing there and how they're supposed to stand and await the public opening of the area so that they can be able to see. So there's not a large number, but of course they will be expecting them to come in to more numbers rather to flood in as the day continues. And once the area is open, of course we can get shots of them and bring you up to speed. Jacob.
All right, thank you very much, Yusuf Farah. A fantastic job there, and of course keep safe as you monitor the events in Parliament together with Ben Troy Njue. Back in studio we still have Ronald Meru from the Muthaiga Golf Club. He's the chairman of the Muthaiga Golf Club, and on the other side we have Stephen Mogaka, who is a constitutional lawyer in the country and trying to just look at the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki from the end of sport as well as his legacy in administration. And I believe, Victor, we cut you short when we were heading to Parliament.
Absolutely. I was just asking Wakili here, during his time as the president, you got that window to, practice freely, and you talked of radical changes in the judiciary.
Yes, indeed. Because practice is two-way. As advocates, we are from the bar representing clients, and the judiciary judiciary forms the bench which ultimately decides which way a dispute is decided. And Kenya was going through some very serious confidence crisis with the judiciary and, of course, even with the legal profession. And that had stifled the legal practice at that time. And that is why we celebrate His Excellency Honorable Mwai Kibaki, that during his time, certain buoyancy came up in the legal profession because there was a shake-up both at the judiciary and then inevitably within the practice. And therefore, we really celebrate Honorable Mwai Kibaki because it gave back confidence to the legal profession that you can actually prosecute your client's case and get the outcome based on the law and not based on the influence. It also brought to an end the mythology then that a judge has to look over their shoulder before they pronounce
and get certain
judgment, particularly when that judgment was directed at government. So it is during President Kibaki's tenure that we saw, the judiciary apply their judicial minds properly as judicial officers to determine.
Former Chief Justice William Mutunga said that at no given point did his phone ring while he was in office. So there was that level of independence from the executive to the judiciary and to the legislature.
Yes, indeed. You can remember that President Kibaki is the one who midwifed the 2010 Constitution.
Yes.
And indeed, it is during Kibaki's tenure that the first, activist, so to speak, took over as a Chief Justice. Quite unlike before, where Chief Justices used to come from the judiciary.
Absolutely.
So it is indeed true that CJ Mutunga brought in certain independence, certain perspectives from the civil society, and it did help. And if what he says is true, that his telephone never rang, then true, the judiciary was independent.
Yes.
But others argue that during the presidential petition, we should have expected better from the from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the time that disallowed certain critical evidence that made a presidential election petition be determined on a technicality rather than on merit.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When you talk of technicality and merit and how to determine cases, that was the point where the fight against corruption began. Because, President Kibaki was so quite deliberate on actually strengthening the economy, which up till now, we can say that the economy did perfectly well during his time.
Yeah, precisely. Because the moment, and the Kenyans are very, very responsive to the business and political environment. And during the NARC government's tenure, President Kibaki had made Kenyans responsible for their economy. And you can remember the kind of advertisement that was going through from KRA, kulipa ushuru na kutotea kujitegemea.
Right.
And that environment made this country for the first time run a budget without a budget deficit. We were able to generate enough revenue to do our programs. You remember that it is during President Kibaki's time that he innovated the infrastructure bond kind of borrowing.
Yes.
Because unlike previous governments which were doing recurrent borrowing through treasury bills and therefore suffocating the economy, President Kibaki was able to introduce infrastructure bonds so that Thika Road was constructed not using a lot of foreign funding, but from locally generated money. So you could say that
it is possible we can do it from our own revenue collection.
Indeed, it is possible. If government came up with the proper financing, government paper, if government stopped defaulting on its debt, because we have a lot of pending bills which government is not able to service.
Yes.
And this is what scares away investors who would have otherwise put their money in government bonds, treasury bills, because this government is likely to default.
Yes. Okay, you're an ex-banker and chair of Kenya Institute of Bankers in Nairobi branch. Give me your experience during President Kibaki's time, the strength of Kenyan shilling against the dollar, the growth of the economy. While you were inside there, what was the feel like?
No, as a banker, I'm telling you, we enjoyed President Kibaki's tenure because that was the time there was real activity.
What is it that you don't know? That as a banker you knew?
No. Of course, what you don't know is the various individual bank customer transactions and relationships, because those are protected by law and must remain at all times confidential. And even as an ex-banker, I cannot.
Economically speaking.
Yeah, but economically speaking, if you looked at the Kenya Bureau of Statistics data of the number of banks branches that were opened during President Kibaki's tenure, if you can see the statistics of the turnover of the business of deposits and withdrawals that were done during President Kibaki's tenure, if you look at the rate of bank failure, because there was one challenge when a certain money was deposited in a bogus bank, and it was during President Kibaki's tenure that such bank was shut down. You remember we had a bank associated with some former anti-corruption czar. We had a bank that was associated with, I don't know, it used to be called Daima Bank. It is during President Kibaki's tenure that we weeded out what we can call kiosk banks that were out to defraud innocent and unsuspecting depositors. So the banking business grew, the employment levels in the banks grew, and you could see the GDP of this country also grow, because the banking activity and transactions are a measure of the economic activity in the Republic. And you can quite see that the higher the banking activity, the higher the growth rate. And that is why under President Kibaki, we achieved the highest, fastest economic growth in this Republic.
Curia, you've been answered.
Don't forget that
the economy did well.
Clearly, President Kibaki did well when it comes to issues of economy, and his rating cannot be compared to any other. And this is a record that runs from the time he was Minister for Finance and Planning. Obviously, after being transferred, something happened in between, and then came back to restore or continue with the job he had started as Minister for Finance. But on this other end, let's talk a bit about sport, and particularly the golf sport. And before we headed over to Victor, you were talking about the repossession of golf clubs that had already probably fallen into people's hands for other users.
Yes. So as we said, he was very, very instrumental in mostly protecting the golf clubs. One thing that he actually was very key at was, you remember before he became the patron of KGU, the former patron was the Duncan Degwa, was the patron at that time. And through the Lands Commission at that time, that was J.R. Njenga, Duncan Degwa actually used Mwai Kibaki when he was the Minister of Finance to make sure at least they protected the golf clubs. There were a lot of clubs that were under threat of grabbing, and some of them I would mention would be like Nyali Golf Club, the old Mombasa Golf Club, Kiambu, Kisii, Nyeri. All these were clubs that were under threat of grabbing. But during his tenure as Minister of Finance, he ensured that these clubs were protected and no club would ever lose its land due to any grabbers that would come to encroach.
Talking about leadership, because you're fairly young in the leadership of Muthaiga Golf Club, and particularly this club. How did President Kibaki engineer a change to young leadership in the game of golf?
Yes, so for him, as I said earlier, in terms of, he always embraced the young generation, and I started, as I said, even as a junior golfer. One thing that I was honored also to have played with him once when I was a very young man. And the one thing about him, he always embraced all generations. He supported and he officiated some of the junior golf events. So he would always want to get everybody involved in the game of golf. And I'll also want to touch a bit on also some of the condolences that I was bringing also today is also from a very special group, which are the caddies of golf. They actually are feeling the big loss and the void that has been left because he cut across, as I said, he was able to interact with all levels of life. And even you can imagine the golf caddy who had, most people would look down upon them, he would also interact with them and make sure that they were all covered. Yes.
The Kenya Open Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Talk to us about it and how President Kibaki ended up there.
Yes, so the Hall of Fame, this actually was in 2016 when the Kenya Golf Union actually had to appreciate some of the golfers who have done a remarkable job for the game of golf in Kenya. And he was among the ones that were honored. Also there was Moshero, who was also one of the initial golfers in the country. And he represented us in the game of golf. So for Kibaki, he was honored in 2016 for this. And obviously, as I said, he has been the anchor and the icon of the game of golf for the past few years, and we feel that he has taken the game to where we are right now. In terms of Kenya Open, obviously he was very instrumental in making sure that we got the Challenge Tour into the country, which was always played mostly at Muthaiga and also at the Karen Golf Club. And one thing that he was very, very, I would say, instrumental in was he always came to officiate the actual event, and this is something that even the Kenyans would always come
when he was president.
When he was president, yes, he would always come, especially when to give the prize giving, and you'd see that is the day that you have most Kenyans coming actually to patronize the game of golf and to watch the professional players play. But this is something he kept growing, and that's why with his initiation of this game, of this tournament, it has grown from being a Challenge Tour event to now what we call the European Tour event, which is the highest level you'd be having, at least in that level of competition. So all these are things and milestones that we'd all give back to the late former president.
That level of commitment, coming to officiate the Kenya Open, probably you can tell us after he exited as president and a golf enthusiast. Have you seen such commitment before, or had you seen such commitment before? Have you seen it after he exited?
So for the former president, for sure, he never missed even one. But what was even more interesting was in 2014, immediately after he left, I remember in Karen, he actually came in with Karen President Mwai, Uhuru Kenyatta, and they officiated actually the prize giving, and they walked with the players on the last day, that was on the Sunday of the Kenya Open, Barclays Kenya Open in 2014. So you could see his commitment for the game of golf. Even after he left being the president of the country, he still came, and he at least came and kept the current president Uhuru Kenyatta company, and it was a great honor to the golfers of the country, and you could see that this was something that it was passion. He had passion for this game of golf. You can imagine he's left the seat of presidency, but he still felt, as a patron of Kenya Golf Union, he was there to support the game of golf. Even after the game of golf, as you're saying, we have seen the same commitment from our current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and we'd like to thank him for that. He has also he took over from where Kibaki left, and he has also been coming, and he supported the game of golf also. And as I said, he's been very instrumental in making sure that we moved from a Challenge Tour event to a European Tour event, which we actually just completed earlier this year, in March this year.
The president was there.
The president was there, and we're happy to have him at the same time.
All right. And we'll talk about probably what you would say was the effect of a president getting a knee injury and not being able to play again. And we'll talk about that. But right about now, again, head out to Victor and Stephen Mogaka, talk a bit about President Kenyatta's style of leadership, and particularly in terms of ensuring that the cogs of justice were moving. Victor.
Absolutely, and at that particular point, let's talk about the matter constitution. It was that particular point, Wakili, where we got our new constitution, and President Mwai Kibaki was at Uhuru Park. That green book lifted aloft, and here we are having our new constitution.
Oh yes, I think that is the biggest celebration we can have on the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki, because it is during his tenure that we actually got a new constitution.
Actually, according to him, it's something that Kenyans fought for 20 years.
Indeed, right. Indeed. And curiously, President Kibaki was for a long time in the KANU government that was extremely intolerant to any constitutional reforms and constitutional change, and nobody ever knew that President Kibaki would turn 360 degrees and be the one who actually midwifed the new constitution. And for that, I think Kenya will forever be grateful. And for those who opposed BBI, of course, they are endorsing the work and legacy of President Mwai Kibaki by saying that it is premature to change this very, very dependable constitution and comparable in the world. So indeed, in terms of constitutional reform, President Kibaki scores an A+. Others think differently because the constitution indeed became a compromise at some point, and it is that informed the referendum that we made, because we all admitted that there were certain reforms of that draft constitution that ought to have built it. But we all again agreed it is prudent to have a half-baked bread than no bread at all. Yeah, so indeed we celebrate President Kibaki for that.
The Kenyan constitution is termed as the most progressive, and as you've correctly put it, not comparable to any other in the world. Where are we as a nation? Out of 100%, where are we?
We are still far from home because the constitution has still relics of the former constitution. The autocratic influence of the presidency in the activities that
needs to be amended.
So the nucleus of the 2010 constitution was devolution, and more devolution. But 10 years into, we have seen us losing the momentum on devolution and coming to centrality or centralization of government affairs, and frustration of the county government, suffocation of county government functions, and therefore we are still far from home. And I think that is why those who thought BBI thought that we have not devolved sufficiently, and we needed to revisit the constitution to ensure that we complete this business of having central government control of national resources, so that we have a rather matrix or flatter executive than we have today. But it is not there yet, and we hope that one day it happens, so that Kenyans can have proportional representation, a proper equitable distribution of government resources, including opportunities to serve in public positions.
As a student of finance, President Mwai Kibaki has been given all the accolades as far as finance is concerned. What do you learn from him? Let me just say, as your role model in this respect.
Honestly, President Kibaki is my role model in particularly in public finance management, because remember, he was a first-class honors from Makerere University, and a master's from Europe. And in his application to the management of public affairs, right from the moment he graduated from university and hit the public position in finance.
Yes.
The president was very, very consistent in what we used to describe as macroeconomic management. Macroeconomic management, for my viewers, are those factors that make the economic environment of a country possible for private enterprise to prosper. And I could see how Honorable Kibaki, as a Minister for Finance, initially, would target raising of revenue from the country, for the country, by really targeting the sumptuous consumption, the luxurious consumption, and protecting and subsidizing the low-income earners. And we saw this now fully applied when he became president, and he created an enabling environment for private sector to prosper. He brought private sector managers and actors to come and participate in the management of public affairs, and therefore the country was run as a business enterprise, targeting at making profits. And it is no wonder then that we were able to generate our own revenue to run our own affairs as a country. And that was the first time that Kenya was truly independent.
Absolutely.
Independent of IMF, independent of the World Bank, and independent of foreign influence. It is therefore surprising that one regime into President Kibaki's government, we are sinking in debt and without commensurate development that is tangible. And we are suffocating the county governments that we thought were supposed to be the drivers of development, because you can imagine if all our 47 counties were firing and developing and creating job opportunities for our youth, taking care of our old and retired, and managing all the institutions that deal with agriculture, that deal with small and micro enterprises, we would be competing with Japan.
I'll get back there, because our level of borrowing way back then was low. I'll get back there. But something Kiore said, that President Mwai Kibaki left lecture halls and dived into the problems of a country which was still trying to grow from the levels of independence. Kiore?
Absolutely. That was President, Kibaki for you. And I mean, it mesmerizes me how a man... And I don't think it's a sacrifices people make in most cases. Like you were saying yesterday, I think the mantra of ask what you can do for your nation, not what your nation can do for you, actually applied for President Kibaki. But because not so many people can make sacrifices as such. Of you're building a career. Actually, President Kibaki gets married in 1961.
Where were you?
So you leave me alone. So the gentleman is newly married, then he's immersing himself into the problems of not yet independent nation. He's newly married, immersing himself into such problems. In fact, helps craft an independence constitution. There's a man who had really offered himself for this very particular job, and that is to improve the lives of Kenyans and to make his country better than it already was, obviously under the plunder of the colonial government. But let's take a bit of sport again, because we're looking at President Kibaki's legacy in broad, and particularly when it comes to the improvement of the sport of golf, because he was an enthusiast. But we were talking about his knee injury. How was the game or the sport of golf affected by this knee injury? Now the President Kibaki cannot play again.
Just to clarify, it was actually, he had a near fatal accident. That was in Machakos, the Machakos Junction in 202. So this really affected him. It was actually his ankle that got affected, and since that time, we have not seen him on the golf course. The last time I believe he held a golf club was in 204. what happened in 2004 is when Muthaiga Golf Club re-engineered the new golf course. So we got a consultant from South Africa, Peter Markovich, who came and made sure that Muthaiga was a championship course. And at this time, the former president was actually the chief guest in opening that the new golf course at Muthaiga Golf Club. And what was very interesting is that to officiate it, we have our number 10, where he actually held the club and tried to hit a ball. That was the last time, I believe, most of us golfers and Kenyans saw him holding a golf club. That was in 2004. And we could say, since that time, we've not seen him play the game of golf. Yeah.
Quite interesting. It is said that at this very particular point when he's playing, and I think Minister Mwai yesterday alluded to the same, the gentleman never spoke politics.
No, not at all. What I've gotten from his previous players and his friends, he kept it, no politics with him. He just wanted to have a good time, didn't want to discuss anything political. He wants to just discuss game, keep it casual. He was a very, as I said, loved just being out there and enjoying himself. Yeah.
And that was President Kibaki, obviously, in so many times, avoiding the very subject of politics. It is said not in so many meetings did President Kibaki ever want to, just have chit-chat about politics. The annual Kibaki Trophy tournament.
Yes.
The family, I understand, is a sponsor.
Yes.
Tell us how that event goes.
Okay, so that one is hosted in Nyeri. That one is hosted at Nyeri Golf Club. He has been hosting it there for many years. It's been there for the past few years that we have known it. And he's also, that's another event that he's, apart from when he was not very well, he's always officiated it. And he's always gone there to support the club of Nyeri. And I'm sure also these are members who have it's a big loss for, as I said, not only one club, it's most of the golf clubs, where he was very, very instrumental in building that game in Nyeri, because that is his home. As you know, that's where he's going to be laid to rest in Othaya. So it's a tournament that has been there for years, and I would say for them and all other tournaments, they invited good players, not only from Nyeri. It was more of a national event. He would have invited guests from all golf clubs who would go and compete for the Kibaki Trophy. And this was an annual event. Yeah.
All right, there's our pictures live from Parliament. Look at the queues. People are up very early to come and honor President Kibaki. And like I said, this is our small sacrifice or gift that we can give to this towering figure in our country. An economist par excellence, a gentle giant, a man who didn't have to swing his hand to show you that he's powerful. He's a man who took it by stride. And one of the things that amazes me up until today, Victor, and probably you can speak about it with Stephen Mogaka, is the man who will just ignore your noise and he continues with his job. Because I remember so many times when there was pressure on the president to speak, and as journalists we were thinking, so what will the president say? How does he end this stalemate? And you remember even the times of consultation when Raila Odinga says on this and this appointments have not been consulted as Prime Minister. And then the man just goes quiet, he doesn't respond. All of a sudden you realize there was even concession even before he spoke. This man was amazing in his own ways.
I think, on a lighter note, I think that's why he's clocked 90. Because he was never stressed about certain things. Vile tunasema wacha ingie na hii side itoke pande ile ingi, but then you process it in a certain way that it doesn't affect your personal life. Give it, an intellectual kind of approach, and that's how people say that during the brink of 2007-2008 PEV, his last word saved this country from sinking. When you talk to Ambassador Mudhaura, who was in the inner circle, would say that the last minute conversation with President Mwai Kibaki saved this nation. And, he never had personal vendetta with anyone. I think there's so much you can learn from him as individuals, all right? We can learn so much from him. Just to pick it from where you've left Kioria here, with Wakili, The issue of borrowing, Wakili, as a finance and economic student, and we all know how President Mwai Kibaki spurred the economy of this country to a level that people can say, that was a country that we are proud of. How can you talk about President Kibaki running the government with little borrowing, but with much of the little that we had?
Yeah, I think as a graduate of finance of the University of Nairobi,
yes,
before I became a banker, I did understand very clearly, and I was a very senior lending manager in the bank. So the basic rules of lending were observed by President Kibaki and his government.
Yes.
And one such basic rule was don't borrow a short-term loan to finance a long-term project.
Repeat that.
Don't borrow a short-term loan, a loan for a short time, to finance a long-term project. What we were suffering from before Kibaki's era, and which is the case now, is reckless borrowing to build huge, humongous long-term infrastructure, but requiring us to pay those loans within a very short time.
And with higher interest.
With a higher interest. In fact, you get suffocated, and when you are struggling to pay, the delayed payments attract penalties,
yes,
and therefore the loan never gets repaid. It keeps snowballing, and that was cardinal sin number one that this country committed, and I'm saying this as an expert in finance. The other intellectual tactic that President Kibaki used in his approach to managing the public affairs,
yes,
he sought to make wealth to tax.
Okay.
He sought to make wealth in Kenya to tax it.
Yes.
But what we are doing here in Kenya now is we are taxing Kenyans to make wealth. Yeah, we are doing the inverse of what prudent economic management requires. Because therefore, we are taxing, and until we will one day find nobody or nothing to tax. Contrary to what President Kibaki's economic policy was, spur the economy, and then out of the economic performance you can actually tax.
Right.
And that is why people were voluntarily, paying tax and doing what they did.
But I think it is quite possible even right now.
It is quite possible. This is why I'm saying that, as managers say, you are only good as your management, and therefore,
absolutely,
even when we choose in this country to put the correct managers in our public over our public resources, then we will get there. Because remember, the practical example I'm giving for President Kibaki's approach, and at that time President Uhuru was actually deputy prime minister and minister in charge of planning.
Right.
And look back at how President Kibaki introduced an economic stimulus package that saw that the country, after post-independence, post-election violence, had gone through a recession. And borrowing from the economics of Germany, where there was a Marshall Plan after the World War to bring Germany back to its feet. President Kibaki employed the economic package stimulus, where he created government expenditure in virtually every constituency and ensured that that government expenditure through construction of hospitals, construction of roads was done by local contractors. And therefore, the money was actually devolved to the locals and started generating a multiplier effect that created wealth that was being
and
taxed
even
now
that, the initiation of new projects were rather low.
Rather low and targeted. It is not like now you wake up, there are double-decker roads in the in the city,
which again is not bad.
They are good for optics, right? But extremely damaging in terms of your sovereignty and independence. Because if you cannot service your debts, if you cannot repay your loans, then you are actually a pauper, you are a beggar. It doesn't matter. how flowery the residence you have constructed looks, you will be sleeping, agonizing and hungry in that residence. So I congratulate President Kibaki posthumously for really doing real economics rather than political economics.
Wakili, we can never exhaust this conversation, but let's take a break. And when you look at the screen there, Kenyans are already lining up to, taking their position, patiently waiting. This is a point where you exercise your patience because it's a military affair once again, and everything has to be done in order. 10 minutes to 8, and I believe at any moment from now, the doors will be opened to the public to view the body. And several people moved, Kenyans came in droves yesterday, today, and even tomorrow. You still have that opportunity. It's open to the public. Go to Parliament buildings. To some people, it may be the first time they're stepping in Parliament. So take all the opportunity that you have and pay your last respect to the fallen gentle giant, as Jacob Kiore would put it, gentle giant. Of course he is. Gentle giant. Jacob?
Yes, Mwai Kibaki was a gentle giant. Like I said, he doesn't have to swing his fist to show you he's powerful. He is powerful, but still doesn't want to, exert that pressure on you, so you realize that he's a powerful man, and he's a man who carried himself with grace. By the way, Victor, I happen to come from the neighboring constituency.
Okay.
From Mathioya constituency. He's from Othaya constituency, and probably can say we enjoyed feeling the warmth of the presidency.
Of power. But
you didn't know that, did you?
But do you say?
No, you didn't know that. So obviously when we talk about President Kibaki's legacy, I can actually tell you, and this is a personal experience, Mathioya was a very dark constituency up until when Mwai Kibaki assumed the presidency. Dark in the sense that the electricity connection in Mathioya was quite a big problem. But courtesy of, being a neighbor, light came too.
So we did good neighbors.
Yeah, good neighborliness. And that is what Mwai Kibaki is to a lot of people, particularly in Nyeri, Muranga, and so many other areas, because in terms of electricity connection, you remember he was the pioneer of rural electrification, not just in his central backyard. But I'm sure even Wakili Stephen Mukaka can tell you how Nyamira looked like and how it looks today. Obviously, because of the same. But coming back to the spot of golf, but of course the pictures on your screen right now are still the number of people queuing up to see the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki. That process will begin at 9 a.m., but the body is already in Parliament building. So if you just woke up or were just catching up with us, the body arrived at Parliament buildings at around, it was actually 10 minutes to 7. That's when the body ended up at the Parliament buildings, and therefore just what is ongoing preparations for the public viewing. But for now, we'll take a short breather. Obviously, when we come back, we pick up with a conversation. But then there are a few graphics I need to show you of the life and times of President Mwai Kibaki. Don't go too far.
Log on to the KBC website at www.kbc.co.ke to get the latest breaking news, entertainment, sports, politics, lifestyle or business trends from Kenya and around the world. Never miss new episodes from your favorite TV shows, reruns and movies. Just stream online or watch live on your YouTube channel at KBC Channel 1 TV shows. For the day's biggest stories, trustworthy news and family entertainment, log on to KBC Channel 1. Watch what you want anytime, anywhere.
Mimi nilijua tu amekasirika.
Amekasirika vipi? How?
Ni madhara gani hawa nionyesha mimi? Ha?
Ni hasira zako. Hizo zisizokuwa na maana ndio zimefanya haya yakatokea.
Wakili, nenda katafute kazi.
That enough is enough, eh? I've had enough of you. Umesikia? Mimi nimelala peke yangu hapa kitanda hiki leo.
Toka kabla nikuaibishe.
If Monica came to ask for a recommendation letter, then that means she wants to start working again. About time that his wife and his family find out exactly what kind of man Gonzalo Murat is.
And put myself on the line.
If Ines finds out, I don't know if she could forgive you for cheating on her for so many years, Gonzalo. Please, you went there to choke the woman I love. And if you put me in a position where I have to choose between her and you, I'm always going to choose her.
What excuse will you use this time for not getting a divorce and marrying me? Madam, Mr. Edgar is hurting the little boy. Please come, madam, please.
Gonna be auctioned off. And she lent money to Jack on purpose with my stock shares as pledge. She schemed with Pinky to get us down.
I have always loved you. I'm overjoyed that you came back to life.
Why are you still begging her to come back to you?
Can you just stay out of my sight, you crazy woman? You're to blame for all of this.
My husband stole your land? How could he know your father at all?
Go back and ask him about it.
If Monica came to ask for a recommendation letter, then that means she wants to start working again. About time that his wife and his family find out exactly what kind of man Gonzalo Murat is.
And put myself on the line.
If Ines finds out, I don't know if she could forgive you for cheating on her for so many years, Gonzalo. Please, you went there to choke the woman I love. And if you put me in a position where I have to choose between her and you, I'm always going to choose her.
What excuse will you use this time for not getting a divorce and marrying me? Madam, Mr. Edgar is hurting the little boy. Please come, madam, please.
In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on the beautiful show. Fare thee well, President Mwai Kibaki. We still continue monitoring events at the Parliament buildings where the public viewing of the body of the late President is ongoing. And in a bit, we'll be changing conversations and we'll be talking to two professors. One of them is Professor Sam Ongeri, who is a senator for Kisii County, was actually Education Minister, and President Mwai Kibaki now aspiring to be governor in the same county of Kisii. I also have Professor Nchemi Ntiba, who is the Chief Administrative Secretary at the State Law Office, and obviously having two professors on set to talk about the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki. But probably we can take the last comment from Ronald, and then Victor will take the last comment from Stephen Mogaka. But they are not gone, because we'll come back with them in a bit once we're done with the two professors. But your last word for this hour, Ronald, so we pass it over to Victor.
Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, for me, for now, as you said, we'll be back. But what we are just saying is we keep celebrating a great statesman and also a very instrumental gentleman who came to change the game of golf. And as we've gone through the interviews, just to keep saying that he has left a big mark and big shoes to be filled, even as the patron of Kenya Golf Union. And I'm sure these are shoes that I'm sure everybody as a golfer and Kenyans are looking forward to see who will be able to fill the shoes that the late former president has left. And we'll keep carrying on with the discussion once we're back.
Absolutely, because we would want to know how the Golf Union plans to honor President Kibaki. But Victor, talk to Stephen, obviously, as we usher in the two professors.
Yes, before we took a break, Mogaka, you're talking about the level of borrowing. Briefly, how can we undo this?
How we can do this is actually like President Kibaki presided over a radical surgery of the judiciary. We must, as a country, do a radical surgery of the executive.
Yes.
Starting from putting into place in August 2022, putting in place a serious legislature that is going to oversee and debar the executive from this level of borrowing, as we set out a program of renegotiating these loans, roll them over to be extremely long-term, and then spur our economy to grow and be able to service those loans. And before you let me off, Victor, permit me to, even if we are in a somber morning mood, permit me to celebrate and congratulate our students who excelled in examinations that were released a few days ago. And lest you forget, my school, which I mentor, support, Nyakeore Secondary School, became the best sub-county school in the Republic of Kenya. So I congratulate the parents, teachers, and students of my Nyakeore Secondary School. In fact, I was there for a prayer meeting 2 days before this miracle performance, and I encourage every other school to give the children we have the best.
Absolutely.
Nyakemincha, Kibirigo, Sironga Girls High School, and my schools are in West Mugrango. I give you a thumbs up.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Wakili, we're not done yet.
Yes.
We'll come back with you later on. We still have got so much more to talk about, because talking about President Mwai Kibaki in just 1 hour will not be possible, but we'll try as much as possible to make sure that we cover whatever we can. Let Wakili to have his cup of coffee. Yes, cup of coffee as on this end, and of course you can also make your way to Parliament buildings and have that moment. And it's an opportunity of a lifetime. So many people probably have never met the late president in person, but nonetheless, it's a situation that we are in as a country, and you can make your way to Parliament buildings and pay your last homage to the fallen gentle giant that is President Mwai Kibaki. Okay, so here we are. And as we speak right now, the event is still taking place. We'll give you those live pictures from Parliament if we have them. We'll have those live pictures from Parliament buildings, and of course, it's a military affair, as we correctly put it. There you have it. Exactly. And the military officers are already taking their positions. If you can take a look, a keen look, all the soldiers there are standing at the four corners of where the body is laid. And they're standing there with all their hands gently put on top of each other. That is a sign of mourning and a sign of ready to protect their fallen hero, the former commander-in-chief. And that picture, all of them are standing at attention with their heads slightly bowed, again a sign of mourning and respect of the fallen head of state. That is the way it's supposed to be. And they're going to stand like that for an hour or two, and then they will have another change of guard. As I said earlier, they are not bodyguards. They are not bodyguards. They are pallbearers, and they are meant to protect that particular area where the former head of state lies. Members of public are already taking their positions and viewing the body one by one as they pass there. Emotions ran high yesterday, as many of them could not control themselves, because for many who say that they are beneficiaries of the free primary education which was initiated by President Mwai Kibaki when he took reins of power. And as it is, this is a situation, and everybody else we can enjoy and say, Asante Sana, President Kibaki. That is the situation. All of them are in the position of colonels, the top ranks in the military drawn from the Kenya Navy, Kenya Army, and the Kenya Air Force, led by a brigadier. And of course, if you look at that table where President Kibaki is laid, it's a white cloth where President, signaling the presidential standard, which was also a color that was his flag. And that is all the way until Saturday. In studio, we have got two professors. With me, I have got Professor Sam Ongeri, who we will engage briefly. But right now, let me hand you over to Curia to take it away. Curia.
All right, those are live pictures from Parliament, as you can see them. The public viewing of the body of late president has started, and members of the public really in earnest, standing up in their numbers, traveling from across the country, from the breadth of the Republic of Kenya, to honor this man, President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Like we said, a man who has sacrificed his life, offered his life to the service of this republic, and each and every one of us has a lesson or two to take from this man who immerses himself into the problems of the republic and decides to be a solution. That is the person of President Mwai Kibaki. And like Victor pointed out, we have Professor Sam Ongeri, a former Minister for Education under President Kibaki. It would be interesting to also understand the work ethic of the president when they were working together. And I also have Professor Michenin Tiba, who is the current Chief Administrative Secretary at the State Law Office, and also at one point serving as honorary lecturer at Makerere University. Quite an interesting bit that is what you would say the life of President Mwai Kibaki. And Professor Ntiba will be sharing with us what is the legacy of the president, and also having, to have the little bit of honor to serve as honorary lecturer in the same university that President Kibaki was serving as a lecturer. But in a bit, I will take you a bit through the life and times of President Emilio Mwai Kibaki. If these graphics could just go a bit back to the early life of President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Those are live pictures from Parliament. Those are live pictures from Parliament as the country continues to mourn President Mwai Kibaki, celebrating his life. We'll be taking you through the early life of President Kibaki all the way up until when he becomes president and after his retirement. But you continue to see the live pictures of the public viewing of the body of President Mwai Kibaki. But for now, probably, Victor, you can take it up with Professor Sam Ongeri before I show you the life and times of President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. Victor?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's the second day, and the body lie in state that is in Parliament buildings. But there is something that people should understand and get to know. There are two things. The body can either lie in state or lie in repose. What do I mean? Lie in state, in this particular situation or scenario, the body of the president is lying at a government building that is designated by the state, while lying in repose would mean the body lies outside a building which is not a government building. You get the difference? Lying in repose. In this situation, the president's body is lying in state. So we have it that, and the military, you know, as I said, you can take a look at how they're standing at attention with their hand, you know, on top of each other, a sign of respect and somber mood engulfing that situation there, with different members of the public taking their time to view the body. Right about now, I'm in studio with Professor Sam Ongeri, who is a senator of KBC County, as well as salivating for the same position as same county as a governor of KBC County. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
And I must say that it must be a very hard time for you as a Kenyan, having lost President Mwai Kibaki, whom I can say was a close friend, not even your boss.
Yes, indeed. President Kibaki was not only my boss, but was also a very great friend. Unknown to many, my first encounter with President Kibaki was way back in 1960.
1960, before
Yes,
independence?
Before independence. He had just quit his job from Makerere University to come and take up a very lowly position of executive officer of KANU, fighting for the liberation and independence of this nation. And I was a student leader in India, doing my Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery.
Yes.
So when we came 1960 in the inaugural flight to Nairobi, one of our desire was to be able to see the chief executive or the executive officer of KANU.
Yes.
Because we had the desire of visiting the late President Jomo Kenyatta in Kapenguria, where he was being incarcerated with these other, the big six.
Yes.
So we had a long chat, and eventually we found it wasn't going to be feasible for us to visit the late president's in Kapenguria.
In Kapenguria.
Because the then chief secretary, Sir Cavendish, could not allow us to do so. And we realized that colonialism was with us.
Right.
And so we went back. Second time when I encountered President Kibaki was when I was getting married. I had already qualified.
Hold on to that. Hold on to that. An interesting bit of history there way back from 1960. We still have got much more. But right about now, let's take a look at the graphics with Jacob Kiore there. What do you have in terms of graphics? And of course, yes,
Victor, let's just have a look at the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki. Looking at this, Mwai Kibaki was born in 1931 in Gatuyaine village, the parents being Kibaki Githinji and Teresia Wanjiko. Now, the education of President Kibaki, he spent early school in Gatuyaine for 2 years, then went to Karema Mission School, Madhari School, which is now Nyeri High School, and in 1950 completes his O-levels at Mangu, then Makerere University, studying economics, history, London School of Economics, BSc in public finance, and then returns to Makerere as assistant lecturer. In 1961, President Mwai Kibaki gets married to Lucy Muthoni Kibaki in the year 1961, but then comes into politics in 1960 as executive officer of KANU and aided the drafting of Kenya's independent constitution. His MP Donholm, which is now Makadara, in 1963. In 1966, he becomes Minister for Commerce and Industry. 69 to 82, Minister for Finance and Economic Planning. Then in 1974, moves his political base to Othaya. Then he's appointed Vice President in 1978. 1982, he becomes Minister for Home Affairs, still as Vice President, but 88, he's dropped as VP and goes to Ministry of Health. 1991, December, resigns from government, and in 1992, forms the Democratic Party of Kenya. That party is still vibrant up until now. In 1992, his first stab at presidency on a DP ticket, he becomes number 3. And 1997, a second stab, this time as second position, and becomes the official leader of opposition. In 2002, opposition parties united and Kibaki won the presidency 62% against Uhuru Kenyatta's 31%. On the 29th of December, he's sworn in as president. Then in 2005, there's a divisive referendum, and this is when he fires almost his entire cabinet. 2007, you remember what happened. Kibaki wins a controversial re-election that sparked violence. Then in 2008, there's national accord. Sharing the presidency. Let's talk about his legacy locally, regionally, and internationally. Free primary education, economic revival, CDF, free speech, or what you call freedom of expression, non-confrontational politics, we've talked about it, the 2010 constitution, the war on corruption, probably it failed under him, but also he was keen on stability in Somalia and Sudan, and what you would call non-aligned diplomacy when it comes to issues of international repute for the Republic of Kenya. What did he do during his retirement? He kept off public life, kept off public affairs, regularly attended church, continued to nurse ill health. At the last public appearance, like you were saying yesterday, was during the public viewing of the late President Daniel Arap Moi. That's the life of President Kibaki in a nutshell. And interestingly, the man who keeps off public affairs after retiring from office. Quite interesting, Victor, you would agree?
Absolutely. And just to ask Prof here, what a decorated kind of a person, one head with all those accolades on him?
Well, it's quite clear that he was down-to-earth person. And he loved people. He loved that this nation should be free.
Yes.
And be able to do its own things in its own way. And therefore, his mindset was one of liberating this country economically.
Right.
Of course, the political stage had already been done.
Yes.
And having served with humility at the lowest position of an executive officer of KANU. And remember, during that period of time, 1960, to be a lecturer at the university was one of the prestigious...
It was a big deal.
A very prestigious
at Makerere University.
At Makerere University,
right.
At most. And therefore, it was a very prestigious position. To relinquish that for a lower position and be able to fight for the liberation of this country, the independence of this country, I think is one of the greatest sacrifice a human being can make.
Right.
So from the beginning, he put his stamp of approval on what he was. A humble people, a servant of the people, wanting to serve the people and wanting to see that the people are free and emancipated from the colonial era, and also being able to participate in the economic growth of this nation.
Absolutely. Prof, you said that the first encounter with the late president was in 1960 during the inaugural flight.
Yes.
You had a chit chat, and later on you'd meet when you're walking down the aisle.
That's right. When I was walking down the aisle in 1968,
yes,
he graciously, with the late Mama, Her Excellency Mama Lucy Kibaki,
yes,
attended my wedding. And I was only a medical registrar at Kenyatta National Hospital. When I gave him the invitation, he remembered our encounter in 1960, and he said he will definitely come. And to my surprise, there he was. He turned up.
Right.
And it was very surprising. And it was one of my greatest moments in life. That somebody of that high-ranking position in Kenya government, as it was, we were free, and we were working, and we were building up the nation. For him to be able to take moments off the busy schedule, to come and attend to our wedding, is one of the most homely thing that you can ever experience.
No wonder your friendship lasted a lifetime until you were appointed minister in his first cabinet. You were a minister, you are the Minister of Education, and then you're also a Minister of Foreign Affairs. Tell me about his passion for education.
Well, before then, I had served with him under President Mwai in the cabinet, before he existed the cabinet to go to the opposition. And when he appointed me the Minister for Education, you remember, it was during the post-election violence.
Right.
Moments were very tense. The situations were extremely unpredictable, and therefore we needed to stabilize the educational system. And as you will recall, he had already started the free primary education.
Yes, which we are enjoying to date.
Which we are enjoying today. And one of the responsibilities that he gave me was, look, Professor Ongeri, I've appointed you, and I'm looking forward to you in completing the circuit of our free education from the primary sector to the secondary sector. So he mandated me to start the 3-day secondary education program in Kenya. Alongside with that, you also mandated me to be able to set up the infrastructure for both our primary and our secondary institutions. And he set aside a budget which was set aside to be able to improve the facilities in our schools. If you go around and recall that these facilities were actually started during that period of time.
Yes.
There had been some development before during President Mwai's era, but this is when we had one intensive approach towards the creation of reasonable facilities in our schools to accommodate the numbers. One other thing you remember, during that post-election violence, we had a lot of student disturbances and upheavals, and strikes, and including the teachers who themselves were on strike. And the notable feature is that we were able to bring them around, and when I mooted to him that one of the things that we need to do in order to stem off these strikes is to start peace education.
Peace education?
Yes.
Right.
And by the way, we developed peace education curriculum to be rolled out to all our schools, having come, emerged from post-election violence.
Yes.
And therefore, our students needed to be reappraised of the new thinking, the new standards, and the new approach in terms of the Kenyan political profile. So there we were, very intensive, very interested in education.
Yes.
He provided enough money for education, and if you care, look back at the budget provisions.
Yes.
The ministry that enjoyed the PACs from the national government, the resources that were collected by a Kenya government was the Ministry of Education.
And it was so close to his heart.
And 96% of the Kenya's revenue collected locally went to education.
Amazing. We'll talk about that, and probably you'll also tell me, how was he during your cabinet meetings? How would he handle himself? Was he a combative kind of a leader, a boss, or personal lifestyle? How was he? I will discuss that with you later on, Prof. But then, Kyoria, you've heard it from Prof himself. Friendship dating way back 1960. I still ask you this question, where were you?
Very much on that, where I was in 1960.
Yes.
But I was around, but not in the physical.
I get the point.
I was around, but not in the physical. But it's quite interesting insight from Professor Ongeri, serving as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Education under President Kibaki, and then having worked with him previously under President Mwai.
Yes.
But also in studio, I'm with Professor Mishenin Tiba, who was actually an honorary lecturer at Makerere University some time ago. And he will tell us how it felt for you, Professor, serving as a lecturer in that distinguished institution where President Kibaki also was.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
You surprised me when you talked about my being honorary lecturer at Makerere University. It so happened that in 1997, when in the process of establishing the East African community, there was a process of reviving the old institutions of the community, which went haywire after the collapse of the old community. And one of those institutions was one to manage the shared fisheries resources of Lake Victoria. The Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization at Njinja, Uganda. So it is at that time when I took that role between 1997 in July and until I came back in 2002, that part of the things I thought I should do, because I was then also, I came from the University of Nairobi, was also to spend time being part-time lecturer at Makerere University so that I could teach some fisheries science and also supervise postgraduate students in their MSc and PhD. Well, of course, people talk about Kibaki then and other Kenyans, which was a good feeling. I think that is what happened at that time. Yeah.
Well, you lecturing at Makerere University. Probably give us a feel. How does Makerere University esteem President Kibaki?
Well, I think you understand that, these institutions came up through the colonial era. You see, and each of the East African countries and their own, higher education setup. Do you remember here, we had only the University of Nairobi, and at the time, Makerere was very prestigious for certain things. Dar es Salaam was prestigious for law. I think University of Nairobi was prestigious for, engineering and things like that. But that was the setup at the time. But you see now, there are so many universities now, where the university education has expanded, which I think is good for our countries, because Chinese have a saying, when you train your people halfway, those people are half useful. And also they can be very expensive in terms of the kind of mistakes that they can make. I think at the time, Nairobi was also an esteemed university. They were happy to have a lecturer from the University of Nairobi with them at that time. And we did a good job too. Yes.
And you did a fantastic job.
Yes.
Tell us, what was your first encounter with President Kibaki? Obviously, you've stayed in the Department of Fisheries, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But tell us about your first encounter with President Mwai Kibaki before I introduce Ben Troy Joy.
Mentally, I always hand off Mwai Kibaki throughout. A very learned man from Makerere, who we also went to London to do some economic things and things like that. And also, his career in government as Minister of Finance. I think all of us knew him as you know, a very, you know, good Minister of Finance in terms of organizing the economy and finance of this country.
Okay, let me cut you short because we will resume on that point because I understand Parliament buildings. Bentroy Njue has the Nairobi gubernatorial aspirant Polycarp Igathe. Very quickly, Bentroy, if you can hear me.
Thank you so much, JJ, back in studio, and indeed we're still at Parliament buildings, and very quickly now we are joined by one of the most famous technocrats we have here in Nairobi, and he's also gunning for the top seat here in Nairobi, the governor's seat. We are talking about Polycarp Igathe, who also had his chance, and many years he had the tutorage of the president himself, President Mwai Kibaki. But let him walk us through his memories with the former president. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much for having me this morning, and I condole with the rest of Kenya. I especially would like to send my condolences to Judy, to Jimmy, to David Kagai, and to Tony Girenji for the loss of their father. We have all lost a father. This was a great tree in the Republic of Kenya that provided shade to all of us. Alikuwa mzee wetu, alikuwa rais wetu, na alikuwa baba yetu. I interacted with Kibaki many times as a member of Kenya Private Sector Alliance, as a director of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance during presidential roundtables. I interacted with him especially one-on-one, one time at Starehe Boys Center, where he was he's a great believer in Starehe Boys Center. And he was very impressed that we were participating there. Then I was the managing director of Vivo Energy Shell, and Shell is a big sponsor of Starehe Boys Center. And he explained to me the history of politics in Nairobi. Operation Jack Scott, when local population and local businessmen were sent away, and children were left without parents because their parents had gone to jail. And he explained to me the essence of that. And I remember his words on that day. He said, "Thank you for continuing to keep alive hope. And you should never give up hope. You should never give in to despair." And for me personally, Kibaki was an inspiration. I also met him back in 1993. That is the first time I interacted with him, really, when I was a student leader at the University of Nairobi. I was the national chairman or president of the International Association of Students Interested in Economics and Business Management, ISEC. And he came to address us. And I was really impressed by his credentials, and I studied economics very hard to emulate President Kibaki. Over the years, we became really good friends. And we would interact once in a while. Then I used to try and play golf. I'm not a golfer anymore. And I also interacted with him on the golf course once in a while. And I remember he had a good sense of humor when he would make a joke and say, "Chairman." Then we would call him chairman because he was chairman of the Democratic Party. And his ball would go to the bush. And I remember he would come out of the bush saying, "This ball does not respect chairmanship," you know. And he had a great sense of humor. He was a humble man. He was not into gossip. He believed gossip was terrorism, and he didn't have any small talk. He was focused, and I think we owe it to him to make sure we don't disappoint. We owe it to him, some of us who are canvassing for votes and asking that, making big promises as we are being told on the circuit, to make sure that our promises, we deliver on our promises. And Kenya will never be the same again, because once upon a time, Mwai Kibaki was president of Kenya. I'm very proud, and I'm also sad that we have lost him, but it is what it is. So at the campaigns in Nairobi, and a bit of a go-slow, and to respect the spirit, to respect President Kibaki, to see him off. And as a father, I will of course be there in Othaya to see that we give him a decent burial, together with all leaders of Nairobi.
And indeed, looking at 2022, we are having the succession politics, and looking at Kibaki, he was a soft-spoken politician, but he was able to do a lot in Kenya. What lessons, you're also seeking a top seat here in Nairobi, what lessons can we get from them?
I think the biggest one is that Kibaki was an impact politician. He wanted to achieve social impact, economic impact, and political impact. He was not a commercial politician. We have two segments of politicians: the commercial ones who come to make money, and the impact ones. Kibaki was truly an impact politician, and I think that is the footsteps I would like to follow, to come in for impact, not to come in for my back pocket. And he kept on saying one of his biggest quotes is, leadership is about service, it's not about self-enrichment. And that is really my inspiration, and I'm really honored to be here on the footsteps of the great assembly of the people of Kenya at Parliament Building in Nairobi to pay my respects to this great man.
Yes, and also you are able to interact with Kibaki on a continental showpiece because he was a Pan-African leader. What lessons has he left for Africa?
That go placidly amid the noise and haste and remember what peace there is in silence. Do your thing. That is desiderata. Nobody was better in that than President Kibaki. And he raised a good family. He was a good friend. He brought competence to government. He was the best public service manager. Him with David Mwiraria, what they did to our economy is amazing. So myself and my deputy governor, who's also here with me, Professor Kaloki, we are very committed to serving Nairobi the way Kibaki served Kenya. We will emulate him, and we hope our children will say, surely the inspiration of Kibaki, we can see it in the 5 years you have served Nairobians after we are elected. And thank you very much for listening to me, and I would like many other people to read the story of Kibaki. For me, for those who know me, even at university in the 1992, I had a friend who used to say, Polycarp, you're not only a fan of Kibaki, you're a fanatic, because I was a young Democrat. And I still remember as a young Democrat, then I joined the Democratic Party, was the first party I ever joined in 1992. We used to say, Toka Gizani, come out of the darkness. Kibaki was a politician of light. He enlightened. He did not generate heat. We need more of those, people who bring light, not people who generate heat. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. That has been Polycarp Igade, who will also be gunning for the top seat here in the county of Nairobi. And he will not be alone. We are also privileged to have also talking to one of the...
Thank you very much, Ben Troy Njue, of course, talking to the lucky man of these corridors, that is Polycarp Igade, and talking about his experience and his knowledge of President Mwai Kibaki. Before we went to Parliament, Professor Micheni Ntiba, you were talking about your first interaction or your first knowing of the president, and you say you only used to hear about Kibaki.
Oh yes, he was very popular.
Yes.
He was known by everybody. Something happened in terms of economy because of him. I think that's what we knew. But later on, of course, I met him when he came for politics in Tharaka Nithi. You know, there was something sentimental about Tharaka Nithi and Kibaki. That they would support him, whatever the case would be. So in many of those times that he came for those political activities in Tharaka Nithi, I met him. But the time that I met him physically was when I was appointed the first permanent secretary in the Ministry of Fisheries and Development in April 2008. That's when I met him first, when we were being, inaugurated and things like that. And I remember that day. He told me, this thing, fish, is very important in our economy.
Yeah.
And we expect you to turn it around. And I think that was very important. You recall those days, fisheries was a very tiny little department. It was instrumental for him and government to lift fisheries from whatever it was.
Actually, you only had the agriculture and livestock, and that was it.
Yes, of course, and the fisheries was lot there in between. I also remember when I was in Jinja, Uganda, at the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization at that time. Fisheries did not belong to any ministry. The period of 5 years I was in Uganda, it shifted ministries 6 times. And the moment a department moves like that, it loses everything. It loses its history, it loses its record, it loses its manpower. So it was instrumental that the Ministry of Fisheries and Development was created during his presidency.
During his presidency.
And it is through that that fisheries and aquaculture, fish farming, grew in leaps and bounds. And eventually also becoming blue economy.
The blue economy.
Yes.
And we'll talk about his work ethic, because what he tells you at that point about, turning around that department, we'd want to know how your working relationship with him. But Victor, Professor Sam Ongeri, not once, not twice, he was in the eye of a storm, obviously, because the Minister of Education is what you would say has a lot of interests.
Right.
How did the president handle him at that point? Was there any pressure of any sort from the president himself? I would want to know that.
Prof, I think you can just answer it direct. How was the president's reaction? Pressure? But we all know that education was his brainchild, the pre-primary education. How was he?
Well, let me put it this way, that having gone through a very difficult moments in early education,
yes,
all the way, and you've already given the chronology on how he progressed from the primary school to the secondary school, and eventually to Makerere University. He realized that the best investment one can make and be able to bring up a nation is invest in education.
Right.
And many parents were finding it very difficult to be able to support their children in primary schools, and also leave alone the secondary schools. And it became his business then that the best gift that they could give Kenyans is to be able to offer free primary education,
yes,
while at the same time offering free secondary education. And I had the opportunity to roll out. Professor Saitoti did the first part of the primary, the late Professor Joe Saitoti did the first primary education free, because he was then the Minister for Education.
Yes.
Then when I came in, I rolled out the free-day secondary school. And together combined, we were able to improve the transition rates.
Yes.
You remember the transition rates from primary to secondary school was very low. Was very low.
Yes.
Almost about 60 or so percent. But when this free primary education came in, and there was full support, the transition rate went up to beyond 78%.
Something that President Kenyatta is actually carrying to date.
No, well, today President Kenyatta has already put it up to 100%.
Yes.
The transition rate. And that is a phenomenal record. It's not an easy thing, because you could see the biggest hindrance to that advancement was moving the next level of educational programs. Was the question of resources. People didn't have resources to advance their education. Poverty levels were very high.
Yes.
And therefore, with those levels of poverty, it was very difficult for parents to get their children going higher than what they had already achieved.
Okay.
So he relieved the parents and everybody from that burden.
Yes.
And it was then left to the students
to do their
part.
Okay. Prof, let's talk politics now.
Yes.
Kenya got to a situation where we were never used to. In 1992, we went through the process, but when it came to 2007, it was now a blown kind of affair. We never expect ourselves to be there. And that is the point that President Mwai Kibaki appointed you and other dignitaries, as well as other legislators and brilliant minds, to sit in that committee to negotiate during the Grand Coalition. Paint for me a picture how it was at that particular point, Prof.
Well, we had reached a crisis point. The country was split in the middle, and it was not going to be sustainable to run the country, given the kind of mood and the scenario that was prevailing then. And I remember one afternoon, our present President, Uhuru Kenyatta, rang me and said, the President will be looking for you shortly. They must have discussed.
Yes.
Because he was then his Minister for Finance at that time. And indeed, shortly after that, I was able to meet him, and they said, I'm appointing you to be a member of this negotiation team. And then he had appointed Honorable Martha Karua
On his side.
On PNU
side, yes. It was you.
It was
Honorable Martha Karua.
Honorable Martha Karua. Honorable Moses Wetangula.
Right.
And later on, Honorable Mutula Kilonzo Senior.
Yes. The late now.
The late now. On our side. On the other side was Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. Honorable James Orengo. Honorable Sally Kosgei.
Yes.
And Honorable the current Deputy President William Ruto.
Right.
So when we went to under the chairmanship of His Excellency late Kofi Annan,
yes,
the Secretary General of the United Nations, when we went to County Hall to start off the meetings, one of the most dramatic things that I've ever experienced in my life happened. The microphones couldn't work.
What do you
Every time, because they wanted to start the meeting,
yes,
they went straight to the meeting, and the microphones could not start. And I remembered, I said, maybe we should pray at this stage. That's how tense it was. And believe it or not, right. I don't know how the verse came to my memory, 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14. And I find myself reciting it. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves, seek my face, and seek my face, I will hear their cry, and I'll come and dwell among them. And when I prayed that, when I started praying that verse, the microphones opened up. That was a miracle that I've yet to understand why they couldn't work before. But as soon as I brought in God's providence and guidance, they just opened up. That's one feature. Secondly, when we had done the normal preliminary openings, we moved back to Serena.
Yes.
That's where the venue of the meeting was. Both sides, the ODM side, the PNU side, the first day we could hardly talk to one another.
Just looking at each other.
Looking at each other. And there was His Excellency Kofi Annan seated there trying to moderate a debate. And for the first few hours, it was impossible to carry out the debate because the suspicions on both sides were very heavy. We didn't know which way, or either this way or the other way. But eventually, we broke the ice. And I did. His Excellency Kofi Annan came and said, Professor Ngeri, you seem to be more elderly than these other people. Is there something we can do? I said, yes. Maybe we should have tea together in the afternoon.
Right.
Try to have tea together. And it worked. When we want to have tea, we now started talking to each other. We recognize each other. Of course, we knew each other before. I had approached the Honorable Sally Kosgei and said, look, we've worked together before during Mwai's government.
Yes.
Here we are. We have a crisis. We need to see how to sort it out. And then, of course, Honorable Mudavadi, we had worked together again in cabinet. These are the people we had worked together in cabinet.
But at this particular point, all of you had your hard lines drawn.
Oh, yes. There were hard lines drawn. And the position was that the ODM side wanted the government take over. And we said, no, it can't work. I think President Kibaki won the elections squarely, and we'll proceed. And then they said, in that case, let's have it halfway. President Kibaki does a 6 months period, and you do and the Right Honorable Prime Minister does the...
Who came up with that proposal?
No, the ODM side. And we said, this won't work. Because there's no way you can split the country into two. Say you take the first 6 months, and then later on another one takes the 6 months.
Yes.
So we disagreed. And then we started agreeing. The first thing at least we agreed upon, there must be ceasefire.
Yes.
Whatever was going on must stop.
Before we get to the negotiating table.
Before we get in the negotiating table.
Right.
And we achieved that in the first 48 hours. And you notice that's when the country settled.
Right.
Because all eyes were on us. The international community was on us. And we needed to resolve that matter. And President Kibaki, that's why I admire him so much, he was always telling us that whatever happens, you must reach at an agreeable position that will save this country from being destroyed.
Prof, it seems a lot happened behind the scenes that even most of us, even in the media, didn't know. But that's okay. That's okay. For the prosperity of a nation, there are certain things that, should be kept, in confidence. And that is where we are. Fast forward to where now we have the white smoke.
Yes.
A deal has been struck, and you are part of the eminent persons, representing both sides, the PNU side. Finally, we are walking out at the footsteps of Arambe House. Give me the mood, how it was.
Well, what happened is that there was a proposal that one way that we can resolve this impasse,
yes,
is to be able to amend the constitution and provide for a position of a prime minister. And we argued for quite a period of time. And His Excellency Kofi Annan said he called for time off. And when he called for time off, he consulted the president.
Right.
And then he consulted the prime minister. And then we were called. And when we went to Arambe House, the president, Kibaki, on his side, he talked to us and they said, this is the proposal, and the things looks reasonable. And we agreed. That's how the white smoke came out.
So it was that position of, let's create a position of a prime minister.
Yes.
And that is how we saw the white smoke.
And then share the portfolios.
Okay. Prof, just hold it there. John Curia, History 101. What happened? You get it.
Absolutely, and I'm just mesmerized by how things change in Kenya, because at one point Professor Sam Ongeri was on the other end, Raila Odinga and his team were on the other end. Now they are together.
And you remember at some point when Raila Odinga was the prime minister, he called for his sacking.
Absolutely, you remember that? I mean, politics in Kenya is quite an interesting time.
You will tell us how he handled the situation way back then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Politics in Kenya is quite an interesting. The only thing that probably Kenyans should learn from this is that there's no room for enmity in politics. You just play from your court, and the other plays from their court, and then probably you will converge at some point. And on this other end, I have Professor Misheni Ntiba, who is the Chief Administrative Secretary in the State Law Office under President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration up until now. But we were talking about the work ethic of President Mwai Kibaki. At that point when he tells you, fisheries is a near forgotten department. We need a turnaround on this. What would you say was your relationship with the president now moving forward, now that he had tasked you with that job, actually by word of mouth and by appointment?
Yes. Of course, it was difficult to grow our ministry from a tiny, almost long forgotten department. And these were the issues that I raised with the staff that were there. How do we create a ministry from a tiny department? And it was interesting, the kind of stories they gave me. What everybody knows about Lake Victoria. So they told me their hope to make a ministry is through Lake Victoria. But they forgot and been to Lake Victoria for 5 years as the boss. And I knew that fishery was getting to a stagnant position. Well, at that point, they also said, we have the Indian Ocean. And so I asked them, the Indian Ocean is a complex environment. It's so dynamic. Half of Kenya is there. And at the time, as a new ministry, you don't have a lot of money for development. I think our development budget that year was only about 400 million. So 400 million is nothing in an ocean. So that's when I asked them what about aquaculture. Oh, there was aquaculture, yes, but we're only producing very little from aquaculture. Only about 2,000 metric tons per year. You couldn't compare that with what came from Lake Victoria. So I asked them, how do we move forward? In fact, it was aquaculture that meant fisheries be known by the entire of Kenya. Because that year, you also recall that there was some clash of world economy, which led to some economic stimulus programs.
Yeah.
And I think that is how fisheries got money to move forward. Because through that effort, through the economic stimulus programs, we got money from Treasury to farm fish in 160 constituencies.
160 constituencies.
And that
out of the 210 then?
Yes, and that is what grew fisheries the way we understand it today. And that's how we have fish being farmed on land, in lakes, in the sea, in dams, and so on and so forth.
Help me understand, because it is easy once you assume government, as President Kibaki did, and you find forgotten departments, you continue with the same trend of a forgotten department. From your understanding, what was this passion President Kibaki had that he would even launch aquaculture projects in 160 constituencies?
Well, the other thing I got to know, he had a long-term relationship with fisheries, sea fisheries, lake fisheries, but he also owned a fish pond at his residence in Muthaiga, which used to be serviced by fisheries officers from the department and also from Kiganjo Trout Farm. Remember where the state launch is in Sagana, and adjacent to it is the trout farm, the government trout farm, where in the olden days, in the colonial era, the governor used to go and fish and eat trout at that point. And so that's why I think he looked at it this way. And I think based on that, then we grew and became what we are now. So that the fisheries ministry and the state department is quite huge now with a new policy. We did a new policy, a new law, yes, new institutions, new people moving forward. I think that is what it was. But it seemed, at one point, he surprised me. He was talking to me about fish farming, aquaculture. And he told me this is a difficult subject. Are you leading it from the front? Or I didn't know where the president was going. I started panicking what he was about to ask.
Yes.
Are you leading it from the front? Or you have joined, you could join some of your colleagues who lead Kenyans in things that they don't believe in. So he asked me, are you farming it yourself? That was the most panicky thing.
Are you doing the farming yourself?
Yes. That was the most panicky situation I had with the president. How to answer him. Well, of course, I was lucky because my father owned a fish pond. I think that's how it started, moving forward. But I think this is important, where you have people with passion leading Kenyans forward. He told me there are those who tell Kenyans about coffee, and they don't have a single coffee plant. The others leading Kenyans in livestock, and they don't have a single unit. I panicked, I'm telling you. Yes.
When he asked you whether you're leading from the front.
Yes.
And of course, when you come back, we'll be talking about the field of academia, where you also come from, and in terms of expansion of space of education in the country. And we'll talk about that. But
I also served.
Yes.
During this term of President Uhuru.
In fisheries still.
I also served as PS for university education and research. For a short time, for about 8 months in 2018. We can talk about it.
And we'll talk about that. But Victor,
yes.
Obviously, like in here, President Kibaki was leading from the front. He has a first permanent secretary who is spearheading the issue of fish farming. And then the direct question to him is, are you doing the farming yourself? or it's just the language of the tongue.
I don't know how he answered the question. Probably if he was not.
No, he was lucky. His father was doing fish farming, so he already had a background on fish farming.
Fair enough.
He says it was a very panicky situation.
Okay. Kiore, what we've just watched on our screens, there was a change of guard at the Parliament buildings there. The soldiers there you have them. The change of guard, the 4 of them who started that exercise excused themselves, they walked out, and then we've had now a new set of pallbearers there at the Parliament building. So of course, members of the public are still streaming in. As we say, it's open to the public. You can also make your way there and pay your last homage. Okay, back with the Prof here. Now, Prof, the white smoke finally came at the footsteps of Harambee House. The deal was, let's create a position of the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And Kenyans were happy, including you.
Yes, we were very happy because there was a solution to a crisis.
We could even see the smile on President Kibaki's face.
Yes.
And Raila Odinga.
That's right. The problem was over. It was back to business. Now we had to start working. And if you noticed, after that, and after the formation of a complete cabinet, I think one thing that people should appreciate, that even when President Kibaki appointed that cabinet,
yes,
he didn't appoint a full cabinet. He appointed a half the cabinet.
What was the reason then?
Because he was still looking and appreciating that out there were also other Kenyans who may not be happy with the way things had happened, and giving room for an expansion of that cabinet.
Yes.
And indeed, when this opportunity arose, he expanded that cabinet. It became 34 cabinet ministers, and then of course a number of assistant ministers went to about 70. But it's not the size of the cabinet that we should be talking about.
Yes.
It's on how did that cabinet function. The cabinet functioned through cabinet subcommittees.
Yes.
And there were various subcommittees set up by the president and now the prime minister. And the prime minister was given the mandate of coordinating the cabinet subcommittees, which functioned very well. And we were very happy because we worked as a team. And no wonder then that the GDP went up to 70% during that period of time.
Yes.
And the revenue, the government revenue, shot up beyond $1 trillion Kenya shilling. Before then, we were reeling at about 700
all because
billion.
there was good coordination.
There's good coordination, and also there was a rapport and a good climate. And things were moving properly. And we achieved a lot during that period of time. And even if you can remember, that's the time we also achieved a lot of infrastructure development.
Right.
The Thika superhighway was done. The massive infrastructure development in schools and the universities, and the expansion of universities, education, the health sector. That's when the healthcare systems were being also funded, and a lot of things were happening in the health sector and the medical schools, the transport sector,
yes,
and the energy sector, including the SGR was mooted during that period of time to start, and I remember that it would have been accomplished, but the time was so short.
Yes,
during that period of time. And when President Uhuru Kenyatta took over, that was the first project he took on because it was already on the works.
Yes.
And it was moving on.
Okay.
And if you look at that development, you wonder how we were able to manage within the resource envelope that was collected locally.
Prof, it's quite interesting to note how President would carry himself, but give me the real picture of the kind of a personality he was.
A gentleman, very insightful in terms of insights.
Yes.
He had insights that you could not fathom sometimes. He had a grip of the socio-economic profile of this country. And globally, having been a minister for finance for over 12 years and a vice president, so he had a grasp of the economic profile of this nation and beyond. And if you remember his association with the late Tom Boyer,
yes,
they worked together with the late President Mwai Kibaki, Mwai, Daniel Arap Moi, and the late Charles Njonjo. They used to work together as a pair, and I think that influence of wishing the country to grow further,
yes,
from one level to another, was at the top of his mind. He was not interested in pettiness.
Something that has been said here since yesterday, and Curia, it quite confirms the kind of a person he was.
Yes.
Prof. Yeah.
He didn't like any petty languages. He was interested in substance rather than pettiness.
Substance.
And he will dismiss you
rather than pettiness.
If you went to pettiness.
I will ask you this when you come back again. Were you having some, tense moment during cabinet meetings because you'd go there, submit your report to him, and then waiting for that simple question? How would you answer? The way, Prof, you were asked, are you fishing yourself? You didn't see that coming, but you are safe, off the hooks.
Quite an interesting one. And particularly, for Professor Sam Ongeri, who said right in cabinet,
yes,
with President Kibaki. It would be interesting to hear his perspective about the same. But let's just speak from where Professor Victor left about the work ethic of President Kibaki, not being a petty person, Professor.
He was very encouraging. I think he would give you a lot of space to do what you want to think and do what you have thought. And I found that very useful, because then you implement and report him back. I think that was his great strategy, where you were working continuously, moving to achieve a certain goal. I found that extremely important. There was not a lot of interruptions and changing of things, changing of the plan that was moving forward. That is key to development, I think, because of its continuity, because of one stone laying over another, and so on. I think that's how his strategy was like.
Most of the times you'll have bosses breathing over your neck and without giving you space to operate and be, probably implement your strategies as the person who's been given such responsibilities. How was the president in terms of giving you space to operate as the person who's been given the job?
Unless you did so badly, he gave us total confidence and space to do what we were meant to do. I think that's what I enjoyed in fisheries.
All right, and that's why you stuck there. Let's talk about the world of academia, where you come from. In terms of expanding that space, what you found there when President Kenyatta appointed you to that department, what you found there, what would you say is President Kibaki's legacy, and what are the building blocks that he kept for you people before you occupied that office?
University education is a very important space for any country, because that then gives you the epitome of developing manpower that will take the country forward. And I found, when I arrived at the department, one was that there was a lot of clamor for new departments, new MBCD, but also it was at a time also when we had been asked, there was a moratorium to develop any more new universities. And those who had been asked before to continue with the universities were very keen to see the universities come through. I think that's the time I went there. But also, most importantly, is that to know that the universities and the university unions have had strikes over and over from the early 1990s. And this was what I confronted first. At that time, we were with Amina Mohamed.
Oh, confronting the strikes now?
The strikes.
Okay.
And I think it is interesting that after we sorted it out, the universities have not been on strike since June 2018. And I pray that this is going to continue because it affects the entire sphere of learning, all the way from primary to whatever, because the young ones expect they will go to the university. And when we have frequent closures of universities, then it becomes very important. I think that was an important milestone moving forward, and we should try to maintain that.
Okay, help me correct if this could be a perception or it could be true. That previously, before the Kibaki administration, there used to exist what we would call moribund or nearly useless courses being offered in universities up until when he came, where now courses were being tailor-made to respond to the problems of the Republic.
It is important to do that, but you must understand what the aims of a university education are about. Is to produce thinkers and a new knowledge, to build new knowledge over old knowledge. You can't build new knowledge without old knowledge. And I think research then becomes key. It is very important. Research is also expensive. And I think this is one of the problems that the universities are facing now. But I also think that the change of education to introduce other departments like TVET, you know, the introduction of universities killed most of the polytechnics the way we knew them, to the extent that around some part in our country, you could not get a plumber if you needed one, or you want to work very hard. You could not get a technical person to help you with the technical things. I think that is what brought new changes into the way we are working now. TVETs are key, building skills, also encouraging professors to work with industry, to work with the local people, to work with the communities. I think that's important, so that the idea of an ivory tower, I think, almost collapsed.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Michelle Ntiba. The CS State Law Office, of course, has been PS Fisheries under President Mwai Kibaki. Thank you very much for sharing insight with us about your working relationship with the President. We continue, looking at the legacy of the great man that is Mwai Kibaki. I'll throw it to Victor to engage a bit Professor Sam Ongeri, and of course bring in the first governor of the county of Kiambu, that is William Kaboko Gitau. He has two other things to say about the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki. Don't go too far. Victor?
All right, but before then, Prof, you had good working relationship with the late president. That is, there's no doubt about that. But then there is one thing that is quite common, that president never missed a church.
He was a very religious person. He appreciated the family values, and I think it was quite evident. When it was time with his family, it was time with his family.
Yes.
When it was time for the public business, it was time for public business.
When it's time for golf, it was time for golf.
When it was time for golf, it was time for golf. So he apportioned his time very, very, very in a balanced way.
Right.
And one of the notable features that has come out quite clearly is that even after the Serena and after the handshake,
yes,
the outcome of those Serena talks, one of the things that needed to be done, that Kenyans had identified as an obstacle towards our peaceful coexistence and towards our peaceful development, was the question of sharing of national resources.
Right.
And therefore it was felt that there must be a new constitution that will bring in all these factors that have been identified as part of the reasons why the crisis running to 2007, 2008. And of course, if you look back at the previous other occasions when we had skirmishes, it was always about the national resource sharing and the inclusiveness rather than exclusiveness of other parts, the marginalization of other parts of the country, other areas. And therefore it was important that this should become. So when we promulgated the new constitution in 2010, the basic element that came out quite clearly is devolution.
Devolution, which was, when you talk about devolution, something that we are still enjoying right now. And Prof, when you look at the growth of devolution, the process that we've gone through as a nation since the promulgation of 2010 Constitution, where are we as a nation?
Let me put it to you this way. If you go to now 47 counties that were a creation of the Constitution, you'll see some measure of development in one way or the other.
Notable.
Very notable development. Why? It's because we've been able to have the national cake shared equitably to all 47 counties. And in fact also created the marginalization fund for those counties that may not have benefited from the previous developments, therefore need to catch up and be able to catch up and with the rest of the rest of the country. And this is a great thing that has happened. And that's why, if you notice before, there was no competition or people wanting to go for county seats because they were being equated as councillors. But councillors were very important people. I was the Minister for Local Government. If you knew how to deal with them and work with them, they always brought out the best of them. But devolution is a game changer.
Devolution is a game changer. And actually, as you correctly put it, everywhere you go, you'd see a notable change. You know, most of these counties, the road network is perfect. Like right now, you can drive all the way from Nairobi to Kisii comfortably.
When you come to Kisii eventually, when I take over as our governor, you will see even a greater change.
That reminds me of the situation on the ground.
Yes.
Senator, I would be so biased if I don't ask you, ground ikoaje?
No, it's poor. It's quite It's quite favorable. People are looking forward to what. I think again it goes back to President Kibaki. What President Kibaki wanted to see is that each region thrives. And this is why some of us have opted to go to the regions so we can make it grow and have achieved that growth pattern that we achieved during the Grand Coalition. If we can transfer that growth pattern to the regional levels, this nation will be way miles ahead. So long as we learn to use our resources properly, without any element of corruption, and being able to plow and making annual development programs and things that will be able to benefit the people. That's what President Kibaki stood for, and that's what every leader should stand for. And more so, when we go to these forthcoming elections, the greatest wish from President Kibaki would have been that we go there with a peaceful mind.
And that is why there was that handshake in 2007, the first handshake, because he wanted peace in the country.
Now, President Kibaki started the first handshake. He handed over that, he infected President Uhuru Kenyatta. So subsequently, President Uhuru Kenyatta has also had a handshake. And I think this handshake should carry us through to a peaceful election. Whoever wins, let the best candidate win.
Absolutely.
But as for me, you know where I stand.
I don't know where you stand, Prof. I don't know where you stand. Where do you stand?
No, I want a united country. I'm for Azimio. And I root for Azimio for the simple reason that it is that very element that President Kibaki worked for, that he didn't want any area marginalized. That now if we can bring these areas together, they will be able to reap the benefits of the wealth of this nation.
Prof, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We can talk about President Mwai Kibaki until dawn again tomorrow, but we'll never be enough. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be speaking to Professor Samungeri, who is a senator of Kisii, saying that, you know what, let's have a peaceful coexistence as was preached by the late President Mwai Kibaki. Okay, Kyoria.
It's time for us to engage now. The first governor of the county of Kiambu and the party leader of the Tujibebe wa Kenya party. You know, as we agonize and also celebrate the life of President Mwai Kibaki, as Kenyans continue to stream into Parliament to view the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, there's so much to speak about, Governor Kabogo, about Mwai Kibaki. Well, first of all, thank you very much for joining us.
It's an honor to appear here.
Yes.
Although at sad times, first and foremost, I must send my condolences to the family and friends of the late President Mwai Kibaki. Such an astute politician, serious leader. And what comes into my mind when we mourn President Kibaki is that what would have happened, that comes to my mind, if we had given him a chance in 1992.
Wow.
Because he's my best so far, and probably the best Kenya will ever have in a long time. If I was told to describe President Kibaki in one word, ni kiongozi bila fitina.
Kiongozi bila fitina.
Bila fitina. And you know, fitina is our biggest problem in politics and leadership of this country. We know that it's been said, and I want to back that saying, that it is during his time that mifuko ya Wakenya ilisikia nafuu. During his time. And it was available for every other Kenyan. If we can emulate Emilio Mwai Kibaki, His Excellency Mwai Kibaki, Kenya is a beautiful country. It's a country that has potential, only with good leadership. I probably would not be there if it were not for President Kibaki myself.
And that is why I want you to take us and tell us about your first encounter with him.
My encounter with President Kibaki was, of course, when he was Minister of Finance. I met him once or twice as a young man. But in 2003, when we got elected into Parliament, I was in Juja as the Member of Parliament. And I remember, of course, when we went to Uhuru Park, for him to take over from, you know, to be handed the reins of power by President Daniel Arap Moi, as he was then. I could see in him pain, and certainly he didn't look comfortable and sure that he was heading to the right place. Of course, one may have been because of that's my own analysis, would have been because probably the accident. And then come the day to open Parliament is postponed for the first time in a very long time. And then the day comes and I see him struggling to speak to the country and from the podium. And I say to myself, God help this country, because this man, we need him. You know the politics of the season then. And as we expected, Kibaki recovered very well. You know, in his first few months, very little was done in terms of development, and people were pulling up and down. You know, gerrymanderings, you know, the guys who become very busy when the chief is not in town. They were busy then. But in 9 months into his presidency, President Kibaki was in full form. He was back. He was the man now, and he took charge of the country. And from there, the country was on a rocket
Describe that moment, Governor Kabogo, in 2002, coming from the administration that was, and now a man who carries hopes and the aspirations of a new Kenya.
As I was saying, you will find the transition was so smooth. Initially, because of his sickness, was a problem. But when Kibaki, Mheshimiwa Kibaki, the president, became fit, and we could tell now he was fine, you saw everyone went to work. You would never see Kibaki every 2 weeks. You would miss him in public life, except Sundays when you would see him going to church. But he was busy in there working. And this is what we lack in this country. So he's a man who let the country grow, and not on autopilot. He was sitting behind the scene, you know, the way you act movies and the main serious guys are behind the scene. Kibaki took the back seat and was leading from the front, but not in public view. He didn't want public recognition as the leader then. He did what he had to do, and we will speak about it for years and years to come.
Speak about that 2002 moment, because I see the Standard carrying a headline that, you know, Kibaki stained the government that Kenyans had put so much hope in it. And it talks about the 2002 moment, that President Kibaki had a moment that he squandered. How do you feel?
He didn't squander the moment. The guy was unwell. He took over office on a wheelchair, and then he got medical complications thereafter. In 3 or 4 or 5 months, we did not know what we were expecting the worst. And once he came back on his feet, as anyone would know, Kibaki is an action man. He's not a man of maneno mingi. You know, his speeches, even if you look at his speeches then, he would hardly speak for 15 minutes. And he would say all he wants to say in 15 minutes, but he delegated work. He delegated to those that were working with him. You know, he was not a guy who wanted to do everything himself, that you have to call him for this and that to happen. He told guys, you know what to do. Do what you have to do, you know, and was very firm with that. And that way, of course, we had a few people here and there who would take advantage of their relationship with him then. He's being unwell in his first few months, you know, the Morungaros of this world. But we overcame that, and to, you know, for 8 years, Kenya was on a steady growth. And I hope that we'll get other presidents who will be able to work like President Kibaki. He was a magnanimous guy. He was a good guy.
You interacted with him, obviously now serving as president and as member of parliament for Othaya.
I remember I got into trouble once because of the fight against Mungiki. You remember there is a time Vijanas were being killed left, right and center in central Kenya, and I came out very vocal against it. And I rubbed shoulders with the snake, you know, I rattled the snake. And I got into real trouble. And I knew my days were numbered. And I went into hiding a little bit for a couple of days, waiting to see if I could get help, because an order had been released for me to be dealt with. Be that as it may, it never happened. I managed to get word to His Excellency President Kibaki, and he intervened and said, no, you can't do these things to a member of parliament. We need to get to establish what is the problem. If you have issues against him, bring them to me. Then I resurfaced. So he gave me a second life. He gave me a new lease of life. Yes.
Going back into the life of a president, leaving lecture halls to come to the Republic of Kenya, not even independent at that point. The sacrifice of a newly married man to come and sort out the problems
I've
of
seen he got married in 1961. When I was being born, this is when he was getting married. And a very brilliant young man from Makerere. You'd have expected him to go to white-collar jobs. But he gave his life to the Republic of Kenya. And we will remember him for the rest of our lives in Kenya as one of our best leaders then. As a young man, of course, with problems of single-party leadership, the only thing you could fault President Kibaki for was the saying that to remove Kanu is like cutting a tree with a mugumo, with a mugumo tree with a blade. But is a man who sacrificed his life for our country, and a man who you will not say he died a very wealthy person. And why he was not very wealthy and why he has died with honor is because the man was not corrupt at all, at all. If you had asked Kibaki to declare what he had, and I'm sure he had done a declaration form in 2013, if you open that form, you will find whatever he owns now in posthumous is what he declared that time. But how about us? those of us that are in leadership today, we have a lot of shame to cover.
All right.
Yes.
Obviously, we cannot generalize Mwai Kibaki or, box him to Mount Kenya region, right? Because that's where you come from, and that's where he came from.
How politics are local.
Absolutely. How would you rate his leadership?
He's born from Nyeri, so that gives him the right to be called a man from Mount Kenya. But he was a nationalist. He was not only the boundaries of Kenya, even the globe, the whole world. Kibaki should and will always be a respected leader the world over. Yes, he is a leader who would have fitted anywhere in the world, even in the first world. A great economist. We're unlucky that we never used that brain to benefit this country in the years before. You remember he was one of the most humiliated vice presidents. That's a story for another day, but he managed. Because of his silence, he managed to walk through it. I don't think there was anything major or crisis for President Kibaki. During the day, they appeared at OP to sign the handshake, the Nusu Mukate thing. You saw how cool he was. Even under a lot of pressure, he appeared quite cool. The only time I saw him angered is when media houses, you guys, played around with him a little bit. But he also had sense of humor. He was a nice guy. We will miss him greatly.
When I listen to the policies of your party every time you're speaking and you talk about Pesa Mfukoni and the economic policies of this country, probably speak to the heart of how Kibaki spurred economic growth in some of the people you represented as governor, as member of parliament for Juja, and the people you seek to represent.
Yes, we talk about development all the time, and we talk about how Kenya needs to move from where we are to a middle-class economy, to a working economy. But we do not tell Kenyans that they are responsible for their own growth. And this is the slogan of our party, Tujibebe, so that we are responsible ourselves to take us to the next level. Our biggest problem is corruption in the Republic of Kenya. Serious corruption. You will see corruption building itself now during electioneering period because people are looking for votes. I want to tell Kenyans, you are also partly responsible for the corruption that you find in this country. When a young man presents himself and he has the gifts of being a leader, you expect handouts from him. What does a young man do? The young man goes back to his parents and tells his parents, we need to get some land sold quickly so that I can spend a little bit of money, handouts here and there, then I'll get into office. What does this man do after he gets into office? Is to thrive to find money to replace that land. So we are causing corruption as Kenyans as we go and vote. So please vote wisely. If you want the Republic of Kenya to change to a working economy, it must start with us. And that's where Tujibebe wa Kenya Party comes from. Our belief is that the country has potential. And again, I want to tell Kenyans, if you are waiting for handouts, as Azimio would say, or as my friend Raila Odinga would say, they will give 6,000. It is a possibility. But for how long would you give 6,000 to every family that doesn't have the capacity to earn for themselves? Let's create the opportunities for Kenyans to work for themselves. A good example, in Kiambu, we started a Biashara Fund where we were able to release, I think, 340 million shillings in 2.5 years to people who would never have access to credit. Most of those bikes that you see in Kiambu, 3,400 of them were bought during that time by people who never had access to formal credit. So, tujenge taifa kwa kuamini sisi wenyewe Kenyans, we are responsible. It is our responsibility.
And in fact, at some point when residents over there went to ask Kibaki for money, he told them to go to the banks and borrow money. Obviously, because he had
that was funny, but it was real. Yes, we must now move from the era of a leader provides money. We have created this notion that even an MCA is responsible for development in the world. And that is not true. They are even stopped by law in participating directly or indirectly in development work. It is not the work of an MCA to ride on a caterpillar grader to show that he's grading roads. That's not his job. But Kenyans We believe it is his, and we must see him working. But we got our priorities wrong as Kenyans. So we are partly to blame for where we find ourselves.
All right. Let me take
you. You'll find Kenyans talking about excessive borrowing, and who is telling people now during the rallies? It is MPs. They are the ones who have allowed the president to overborrow. You understand? But Kenyans are told these things in rallies and they get excited.
You get excited over it. Let me take you back because you mentioned about 1992 and you're still in the legacy of President Mwai Kibaki. The live pictures you see there are of residents as they stream into Parliament to view the body of the late president. But when you talk about 1992, there are those who feel...
2002 or 92?
1992.
Yes.
There are those who feel like President Kibaki was a spoiler for Kenneth Stanley Jindo Matiba, who had a realistic opportunity.
I want to say every Kenyan has a dream, just like Mwai Kibaki then, just like me. I probably think one day I will be the president of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay.
So you will not tell me I'm a spoiler if I offer myself for election. It's competitive. So it's bad that we had Kibaki and the Honorable Jindo Matiba running at the same time. We would have had a Kikuyu president then. But be that as it may, it's water under the bridge. It doesn't have to be a Kikuyu. I don't know why we define ourselves with our tribes. But all politics, they say it's local. So you have to have some base somewhere that propels you and pushes you to go and vie. But one day Kenya will be about the entire republic, and that is the day I am looking for before I retire. That we will have a Kenya that thinks as a nation and not as tribes.
The beneficiaries of the free primary education are probably going to be voting for you and other candidates for the first time in the upcoming election.
Right.
Kindly speak a bit about the legacy of President Kibaki when it comes to empowering people with education.
You say if it were, I would look at the opposite. If we didn't have free primary education, how many children would have missed school? Probably 60% of those that are now graduates would never have made it through school because they would have to find money to pay, and they would not find money to pay. And I believe if you look at Mheshimiwa Kibaki came from a very poor family. He was educated by his brother or some family members. And so he understood right from the beginning, giving opportunities to even those that have not. Of course, if this had been extended further to high school during the same time, you would find the transition from primary to secondary would have been almost 100%. But you will find, again, many missed the opportunity. Even after going through free primary education, they missed secondary because they could not pay. And I'm hoping that the next few years, we should be able to have complete free education, right from nursery school to university for first degree. And you'll be asked to pay for a second degree. But hongera to the late president that Kenya is where it is, partly because of him. My biggest question is, I would ask Uhuru Kenyatta, how do you feel? You know, how do you feel? You're in office now. It's your 11th hour. You're just about to retire. How do you feel as compared to President Kibaki? That is one thing I want to ask Uhuru Kenyatta and see what he tells me.
And he is your friend. You
He is
get
my
the
friend,
opportunity to ask him. Before I let you go, Governor, for people seeking public offices, like yourself, you have occupied public office before, and now your second stab as governor for Kiambu County. And there are many other people, a litany of them, seeking public offices. What inspiration, what lessons can be learned from President Kibaki?
I will speak both for myself and against my beliefs, is that sometimes for a nation to grow, you need real leadership, not politicians. Kenya has 99.9 leaders as politicians. People who think about only the next general election. You will find people started campaigning in 2017. The next day after 26, which was 27th, they started. They are still campaigning. But there are others who never think about elections. They think about the next generation. And we are very few. Very, very few. And I tell Kenyans, it is because of you these leaders are going to be in office. You are responsible for putting in clean or otherwise leaders. So why can't Kenyans take the opportunity now to elect leaders who will be able to take Kenya to the next level? It is our chance now as Kenyans. But most of us want to go to leadership because it's our time to eat. As Clay would have said it a few years ago, that gluttony, we were puking on. You remember that statement from the High Commissioner of the UK here. We do not look at going to leadership, most of us, to take Kenya to the next level. It is your time. And why are elections in Africa, Kenya included, so emotive? Why is there so much emotions during elections? I'll tell you simply why. You are stopping me from going to eat. This is a matter of life and death about eating. And that is why you can't take even losing. You want to force yourself. You want to fight. You cause all sorts of mayhem because you have been stopped from going to. Why is it that we don't have the same problem in the UK? You notice that Germany just did an election
even
the
France,
other day. France on Sunday. And these emotions are not there because the guy has offered himself for leadership. You reject him, he takes his cycle and cycles away. But here, you know, you are stopping people who are lined up to, you know, oil their pockets. Look at them and you know them. Either side, we are in trouble. We are in serious trouble.
Well, probably God will raise another president, Kibaki.
But you know, God does not do elections. I always say, God gives us the wishes of our hearts. What we desire, what we pray for is what we get.
Absolutely.
If God did elections, would he have elected Idi Amin of Uganda? Would he have elected Hitler?
No.
Would he have given us the ones he gave in Kiambu, in Nairobi? You know those things. It is what you ask for. What you ask for is what you will get.
Governor William Kabogo, the first governor of Kiambu County, the party leader of the Tujibebe Kenya party, now seeking second stab at the Kiambu governorship. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you have a question for Governor Kabogo?
Just before I let the governor go. Governor, good morning, first of all. Just to ask you, IBC set a deadline for aspirants, including yourself as a governor aspirant, for you to name your running mates, and there is a meeting that's slated for today for you to get that name, your running mate, to Thursday. What's your feeling on the 28th deadline? Of course, we've heard that ODM side or Azimio side is rooting for May 29th to June 6th. To be the deadline. What's your take on that?
I don't know what the panic is all about, because at the end of the day, the presidential candidate must have a running mate. The governor candidate must have a running mate.
Yes.
So I don't know what the panic is all about, but you know why? It is because that will be a game changer. If Raila makes a mistake and gets a certain person, the other side would want to benefit. This should happen at the midnight of 28th, not any other time. I'm ready with my card. I have my deputy in place in my mind. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're okay with the Thursday deadline?
I'm okay that we do it before 28th. That's the date I want to keep.
Governor Kabogo already has his running mate, so I think he's just waiting for the midnight.
I also may be someone's running mate, you never know.
Okay.
You never know.
Quite interesting. Victor, take it away.
All right, so thank you so much, Governor, for your time as well, for your insightful comments there regarding President Mwai Kibaki. And of course, the viewing of the body is still happening at the Parliament buildings. And, you know, if you have got a minute or two, you can also take your time and walk there. It's open to the public so that you can go and have your last respect to the head of state, that is the late President Mwai Kibaki. Of course, that has been happening. Moments ago, that's around 30 or so minutes ago, we saw the change of guard, and that will be happening in an hourly or two basis, so that each and every day is that interval where there's that change of guard. Just to bring you up to speed on what you should be expecting. Now, the viewing of the body started yesterday, and the viewing of the body will lie in state from yesterday, today, and ends tomorrow. And of course, the body will be taken back to Lee Funeral Home. Those are live pictures from Parliament buildings, the exit point after viewing of the body. Thereafter, on Friday, there will be an interdenominational prayer at the Nyayo National Stadium. This will be open again to the public, and we expect other international dignitaries, including several heads of state, to attend that function. And then finally on Saturday, the former head of state will be laid to rest in Othaya, Nyeri County. Of course, this is being undertaken by the military, drawn from the Kenya Army, the Kenya Navy, and the Kenya Air Force, with the leadership of the Brigadier taking charge, with the colonels, that is the soldiers, the military in the ranks of colonels taking charge as pall bearers. Okay, so the whole scenario will be, the whole event will take place until 5 p.m. when the body will be taken to Lee Funeral Home, again for an overnight stay, where again the body will be brought back to Parliament for the third and final day at Parliament buildings. Just to give you a brief, this is going to be apart from President Mwai Kibaki, other state officers who have been given a state burial include, the founding president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. We have Kijana Wamalwa, who is a former vice president. We have got Nobel Peace Laureate Wangari Maathai, former Nyeri Governor Wahome Gakuru. We all know that he died in a road accident, and former First Lady Lucy Kibaki, and now we have got former President, the late President Mwai Kibaki. So that is happening under the proclamation from the President that will be happening, and of course all the flags will be flown at half-mast throughout the morning period that will last until the last day when the late president will be laid to rest. It's going to be interesting to see how the situation is going to play out in Nyeri now that the corona pandemic, the government lifted some of the restrictions, whether it will be open to the public to attend that particular final rites ceremony in Othaya or not. That will be again communicated by the government. In this particular situation, the late president will get 19-gun salute, the same way President Moi received, because it's obvious that he died out of office. Only presidents or heads of state who die while in office receive a 21-gun salute. President Kenyatta, that is President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, got 21-gun salute because, of course, he died while in office, and he lay in state for 10 days, and the mourning period lasted for a month. There's a big difference there. There's a big difference there. And as I earlier said, there is a difference between lying in state and lying in repose. In this scenario, the late President Mwai Kibaki is lying in state because Parliament is a government building. But when a body lie or is set for viewing in a designated building, which is not a government building, then its term is called lying in repose. That again is different. But of course it depends from different jurisdictions, from country to country. And in this situation in Kenya, President Mwai Kibaki lie in state. Curia?
Well, the live pictures you see there, these are Kenyans getting out of Parliament now, because as you can see, that's the entrance from the media center to Parliament, and that means if they're coming from there, they're exiting to viewing the body of the late President Mwai Kibaki. And this is an event that will continue up until tomorrow, 5 p.m. That is not to mean that it is continuous. It will end today at 5 p.m. The body of the late president will be taken back to the funeral, and then tomorrow again, just like has been today and yesterday, the body will be taken back to Parliament again for the last day of viewing, and then there will be a bit of a rest on Thursday. On Friday, the memorial service that is interdenominational at the Nyayo National Stadium. This is where we expect international dignitaries as well as presidents to come and honor the third president of the Republic. And then on Saturday, all eyes will be in Othaya as we inter President Mwai Kibaki, a man who has so many records to his label in terms of what you would say is his record of work, and in terms of raising this country to the levels of economic recovery. And I don't think, Victor, the economy of Kenya has grown to the levels it had grown in the first term of President Mwai Kibaki. That's the first time. You can imagine an economy that was really stagnating to growing by double digits. It was a lot of work being put there. And probably at some point we'll talk about the record on corruption. Because you remember in 2002, Victor, when President Kibaki takes over the reins of power, there was something called citizen arrest. In the sense that you are caught on the wrong end of the law. It's actually citizens who will arrest you
to a police station.
And actually take you to a police station.
Right.
And the war on corruption had really picked up so well. I don't know at what point then the ball dropped, because that's when now the Anglo leasing scandal and stuff like that, the cemetery scandal, the Triton scandal, that's when they came about. But in the first years of President Kibaki, you would admit that the country had made quite huge strides in terms of fighting corruption. And it had started at the lowest of levels.
Because, you know, citizen arrest is still active right now. Even you right now, if you find somebody breaking the law, then you're mandated or you're allowed to escort someone to a police station. And that is why, have you ever noticed that anytime a police officer, or in any situation where there is a mob justice, a police officer will tell you one thing. You better take this guy to a police station, musimuwe, all right? Because when you take an injured person to a police cell, if he dies there, then the case will change. So the only thing you need to do, that's why police officers, when they arrest you, they will escort you to a police station. They don't clobber you, they don't, you know, batter you or beat you up. They escort you to a police station.
And probably it is important at this point to engage Steve Mogake and, you know, ask this very question of, obviously running in the corridors of justice because he's a lawyer. What is the missing link in the war against corruption? Because at some point we appear like we are winning the war against corruption.
At the same time,
all of a sudden it looks like we're making 10 steps behind.
Right.
Wakili Mogake, what is the problem?
Thank you, Kiri. The problem is us, and it can't be explained better than that us Kenyans have all the laws and toolkits to fight and combat corruption, but none of us are keen to utilize it. One of such tool is what you've just spoken about, the citizen arrest, because every Kenyan has a duty to prevent a crime, to report a crime, and to assist in apprehending a person who commits a crime. All corruption is done under some nose of Kenyans, and we countenance it. And therefore, the biggest obstacle towards the fight against corruption is the Kenyans themselves. By countenancing it, by failing to show zero tolerance to corruption, that's why we are where we are. Remember also that aside from the citizen arrest, we have actually three types of arrests. There's arrest, the ordinary one we know by the police. The second type of arrest is arrest by magistrate, because if you think there is some sacred cow somewhere who is not arrestable by the police or members of the public, then you can actually make an application to a magistrate's court, and the magistrates will issue a warrant of arrest, and that type of arrest, we call it a magistrate's arrest. And again, then there is that citizen's arrest. So ask myself, out of the 40 to 50 million Kenyans that we are here, how many of us have never witnessed a crime or an act of corruption? And more importantly, how many of us have taken their civic duty to arrest or cause to be arrested the perpetrators of that corruption? Indeed, let us confess that Kenya can only be as good as us, and if we are tolerant of corruption, then we make an enabling environment for the sprouting and flourishing of corruption.
Ooh, the ball is in your court, Victor.
All right. So let's talk about Mbata's economy. And before we took a break, of course, you were so passionate about the issue of the growth of our economy. And something Kiora has also mentioned, that during Kibaki's tenure, we had a tremendous growth. That's something that we can talk about right now. But then now, as we speak, everybody's lips is tunaumia, tunaumia, tunaumia. How can we save the situation as a country? At the end of the day, we need to feel some, some ease, kumfuko. No?
Thank you. My thinking as a finance expert, particularly on development finance, there are grievous mistakes that we have committed as a country, and I will cite a few of them by exposing the way the Kibaki government did it, as opposed to how we are doing it. President Kibaki, as I said, raised money locally using infrastructure bonds to generate money for development expenditure. And the meaning of that is that the interest or profit on those debts were paid to local Kenyans. So that money generated profit and therefore spurred growth in the economy. The other key thing with Kibaki's government is that he insisted on local contractors, meaning that the development expenditure in this country went to Kenyans' hands and pockets, and therefore we created a multiplier effect, because it is then these local contractors who employed local employees, who employed local security people, who employed everything local. What we are doing now is completely opposite that, because we are taking foreign debt, very expensive short-term foreign debt. We are contracting foreign contractors who come in with virtually everything, so that we are doing what in economics we used to describe as a wholesale transportation of a foreign infrastructure, rather foreign expertise, and therefore paying them heavily using foreign exchange, and therefore the country is paying out so much and therefore bleeding, and that is why we are almost getting asphyxiated, because we are bleeding this country instead of growing it. And that is why I am saying that going forward, as a country, and to get out of this vicious cycle of external debt, we need a responsible legislature that will enact laws that they intend to be applied in this country. And if we put a debt ceiling, let it be a debt ceiling that is well thought of, that is informed, and that is going to be enforced.
But even as you talk about the debt ceiling, even the arm of the legislature, actually, people would argue that surpassed the debt ceiling that was set.
Precisely. That is why I am saying that when we have a bunch of jokers who say we are enacting a law putting a debt ceiling, no sooner does that get signed as a law, another debt ceiling is being... That is not a ceiling at all, because a ceiling is meant to be a ceiling. And really that is where our problem is, that our Ministry of Planning, if we ever have one in office, is not able to come and think through our 5-year plan, our call it 30-year plan. We used to have a 2030 development plan. we are not operating by that, and we are not being driven by our ability to generate revenue and our ability to absorb debt. Because it is one thing to take debt, but it is another story to have the capacity to absorb debt.
Wakili, just to cut you short, my problem with the local contractors, as you put it, you remember 22nd of October in 2017, the Sigiri Bridge in Western Kenya. Kioria, Sigiri Bridge was built within no days, it was down again, and local contractors, and perhaps that is why the current government opted for international contractors, because I will give you a contract, just get me a 500-meter bridge at a cost of, and what we see next, a bridge collapsing after a few days.
True. That is why I told you that we need a serious legislature that will do serious and efficient oversight in this republic. Because remember, the example you are alluding to is a sad example of condoning, eating, and living corruption. Because remember, a contractor, whether local or foreign, has certain requirements they must fulfill before they are awarded that contract. One of them being giving a performance bond from a very reputable insurance company or a bank. So much so that if they do a shoddy job, the cost of that contract is supposed to be paid back by the insurance company. And there's no insurance company or bank that is going to give a performance contract to an incompetent kind of situation. So what you are describing is not even a question of local contractor or not. That is a designed scheme to steal public money by making sure that there is no bridge at all. At the end of the day, they are using the purported bridge project to siphon public money. And sadly, the users of that bridge do not express sufficient outrage, do not come out to report those thieves, and nobody takes any step or action against those thieves of public money and pretenders masquerading as contractors when they are not. That is why, in my humble view, we will only grow at the growth rate that this country, as Kenyans, we have chosen to. Otherwise, if we continue celebrating, remember, whoever was the contractor of that collapsed bridge may have stood as an MCA using the same money they have stolen, and he has been voted in overwhelmingly. So then where are we?
Then where are we?
Kioria, where are we? Of course, the live pictures you continue seeing on your screen are pictures from Parliament as Kenyans continue to witness the viewing of the body of the late President Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. And obviously, when you talk about the Sigiri Bridge, I think it collapsed faster than the Tower of Babel, but let's take a breather. When we come back, we pick it up. Obviously, also with Ronald Meru, who is the chairman of the Muthaiga Golf Club. And we'll talk about, interestingly, he's the vice chair of the alumni of Mangu, where President Kibaki studied. So it would also be important to understand the contribution of President Kibaki in Mangu High School. But that is after this breather.
auctioned off. And she lent money to Jack on purpose with my stock shares as pledge. She schemed with Pinky to get us down.
I have always loved you. I'm overjoyed that you came back to life.
Why are you still begging her to come back to you?
Can you just stay out of my sight, you crazy woman? You're to blame for all of this.
My husband stole your land? How could he know your father at all?
Go back and ask him about it.
If Monica came to ask for a recommendation letter, then that means she wants to start working again. It's about time that his wife and his family find out exactly what kind of man Gonzalo Murat is.
And put myself on the line.
If Inez finds out, I don't know if she could forgive you for cheating on her for so many years, Gonzalo. Please, you went there to choke the woman I love. And if you put me in a position where I have to choose between her and you, I'm always going to choose her.
New excuse will you use this time for not getting a divorce and marrying me?
Madam, Mr. Edgar is hurting the little boy. Please come, madam, please.
Mimi nilijua tu amekasirika.
Amekasirika vipi? How?
Ni madhara gani hawa nionyesha mimi? Ha?
Ni hasira zako hizo zisizokuwa na maana ndio zimefanya haya yakatokea.
Wakili, nenda katafute kazi tu.
That enough is enough, eh? I've had enough of you. Umesikia? Mimi nimelala peke yangu hapa kitanda hiki leo.
Toka kabla nikuaibishe.